In this episode of the Junior PenTester training series, we are going to pick up on Metasploit, and we have 3 specific videos dedicated to Metasploit in this module. Obviously, there's going to be the introduction, and then we have a couple of other ones after the fact where we get into more intermediate and advanced stuff. And Metasploit, as the name kind of implies, is an exploitation framework. So this is a very, very exciting tool. And it's another one of these industry standards that if you just get really good at Metasploit, for the most part, you can pull off anything when it comes down to pen testing because it can help you with reconnaissance, it can help you with the actual exploitation itself, and then even post-exploitation when you've entered the machine or you've entered the network and now you want to rummage around and go into different machines or different systems, different users, so on and so forth. So the tool Metasploit as a framework, the framework of Metasploit is extremely useful and very, very handy. And it's one of those things that I highly encourage you to practice with and master and do whatever you possibly can if you're interested in pen testing, right? So that's like the caveat. It's kind of like the asterisk. If you're interested in pen testing, then you got to get good at Metasploit. If you want to go into defensive security, if you want to go into forensics or something like that, maybe you don't really need Metasploit. But if you're interested in being an ethical hacker, if you're interested in being a penetration tester, this is one of your most powerful tools in your arsenal. So, as always, we have our introduction, we have the main components of Metasploit, Msfconsole, working with the various modules, and then we're going to have the summary, and we're going to wrap it all up. And this is a free room that is available to anybody who just creates an account with TryHackMe with a username and password. And that's basically it. And you get to launch the virtual machine that I'm going to be using today. I've already launched it. And you get to launch the attack box that I'm going to be using today. I've already launched it. I just want to kind of shrink it because I'm super zoomed in on the screen here. And it's one of those really cool things about TryHackMe. It's totally free. You get access to this room and the virtual machine and the attack box and all that stuff. So highly, highly recommend it. If you haven't done so already, get yourself a profile with TryHackMe. It was also created, obviously, on the TryHackMe platform by, I want to say, Amoeba Man. That kind of what it feels like that's saying. It's Amoeba Man, it feels like what that username is saying. So a big shout out to Amoeba Man, and very grateful for your hard work and for everything that you've done. And shout out to TryHackMe for providing the platform for us to study. So all of that now out of the way, quick little introduction to Hackaholics Anonymous, and we're going to jump deep into it. If you're serious about your SysAdmin education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers, the Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the introduction to Metasploit. As I mentioned in the intro, Metasploit is the most widely used exploitation framework. It's a powerful tool that can support all phases of a pen testing engagement, from information gathering and reconnaissance to post-exploitation. I feel like I literally said all of that. I'm getting pretty good at this stuff. Metasploit has 2 main versions. We have Metasploit Pro, and then we have the Metasploit Framework. The commercial version is Metasploit Pro, and it facilitates the automation and management of tasks, and it has a graphical user interface as well. And a lot of people who actually have the Pro version like the graphical interface because you can click around instead of having to rummage around with command line stuff. I personally like the command line stuff because it makes me feel like a hacker, and that is what the framework is for us. So the Metasploit framework is the open source version that works from the command line, and we're going to be focusing on this specific version, and it's installed on the attack box that I have, and it's most commonly used during pen testing with Linux distributions. So the Metasploit framework is a set of tools that allow information gathering, scanning, exploitation, exploit development, post-exploitation, and so much more. And while the primary usage of Metasploit framework focuses on the pen testing domain, it's also useful for vulnerability research and exploit development. The main components are going to be using is this: the Msfconsole, the modules, and the tools. So the Msfconsole is literally when you want to enter into Metasploit, you type in Msfconsole, you press enter, and it takes a few seconds and it loads up the Metasploit framework inside of the command line. And then inside of the console, you have all of these supporting modules. So exploits, scanners, payloads, a variety of different things, and we'll be talking about those as well. And then we have the tools. These are standalone, and they help with vulnerability research, assessment, pen testing. And some of these are Msfvenom, pattern create, and pattern offset. And in a lot of the videos that we've had to create payloads, we've used Msfvenom. And we're going to be covering Msfvenom within this specific video, but pattern create and pattern offset are used in exploit development, which is beyond the scope of this video. And we're going to be focusing on the main components of Metasploit while providing with a solid foundation on how to find relevant exploits, set parameters, and exploit vulnerable services on your target system. And once you've completed this video and this room inside of TryHackMe, you'll be able to navigate and use the Metasploit command line comfortably. That's the goal, is for you to get comfortable with this so that you can kind of hit the ground running and go nuts, really. I've already started the attack box. I've already started the virtual machine by clicking what used to be a green button right here. And so we are ready to go. So let's talk about the main components of Metasploit. While you're using the framework, you will primarily interact with the Metasploit console, and you can launch it by doing Msfconsole in the command line, and it'll be the main interface that you will use to interact with the different modules of the MSF framework. Now, the modules are small components within the framework that are built to perform a specific task, like exploiting a vulnerability, scanning a target, or performing a brute force attack. So earlier on in this pathway in Jr.PenTester, we talked about Nmap, and we created 4 or 5 videos on Nmap. And inside of Msfconsole, there is an Nmap module. So you can actually use Nmap inside of Metasploit. So before we dive deeper into them, it would be helpful to clarify a few of these concepts. Number one is the exploit, right? A piece of code that uses a vulnerability present on the target system. And we can say that it abuses the vulnerability, right? It takes advantage of that vulnerability that's present on the target system. The vulnerability is a design code or logic flaw that affects the target system. So it's a weakness, right? The exploitation of a vulnerability can result in disclosing confidential information or allowing the attacker to execute code on the target system. And then we have the payload. The exploit will take advantage of a vulnerability. However, if we want the exploit to have the result that we want, maybe gaining access to the target or reading confidential information, we need to use a payload. And payloads are the code that will run on the target system once the exploit has been completed, right? So you exploit a vulnerability and then you launch a payload. That's kind of how these things play out. So modules and categories under each one of them are listed here, and they give reference for purposes, but you will interact with them through the console in a little bit. So we have the auxiliary modules, and these are any supporting modules like scanners, crawlers, fuzzers. They can all be found here. And so in this list that we see here, so this is, by the way, they just did an ls command, right? Or excuse me, a tree command. So basically they're just listing everything inside of the auxiliary modules. So we have admin, analyze, all this stuff, right? And then you just keep going. You have PDF in here, you have the parser in here, you have various fuzzers, and inside of scanners, I bet we will be able to find Nmap in there. Then we have encoders that allow you to encode the exploit and payload in the hope that a signature-based antivirus may miss them. So signature-based antivirus and security solutions have a database of known threats, also known as their signatures. So they collect the signatures of these threats, and anytime one of those signatures are recognized, you're automatically blocked. So when you encode something, the whole goal is to make it seem like you're not that original thing, right? You don't have the signature of that original threat or that original payload. So we have a variety of encoders. So we have CMD, generic, MIPS, whatever, and MIP, PHP, PPC, Ruby, Spark, x64, and x66. These are just some of our encoders. And again, we are just doing a simple tree command inside of the encoders location. What just happened here? what happened to my screen? Let me zoom out here. That was weird. Okay, great. So now we have evasion. So encoders will encode the payload. This should not be considered a direct attempt to evade antivirus. On the other hand, evasion modules will actually try that. They'll try to evade the antivirus and, more or less successfully. So we're not saying that they're for sure going to work 100%, but they can work. So we have the Windows version of evaders that is being displayed to us right here. So app locker evasion, process herpaderping. I think that's like a technical term. Herpaderping is a technical term. Syscall injection, Windows Defender, etc. And then we have exploits. So these are, as the name implies, just the various exploits. And what I really love about this is that there are Android exploits, Apple iOS exploits. There are Firefox and Linux and OpenBSD and Unix and Windows, Solaris. There are so many different categories of exploits. And each one of these that you open up will have dozens of exploits inside of it. Finally, we have non-operations, so NOPs, they do nothing, literally. They are represented in the Intel x86 CPU family with 0x90, following which the CPU will do nothing for one cycle, and they're often used as a buffer to achieve consistent payload sizes. And so we have our various types of NOPs and then payloads. The codes that will run on the system. I said finally in the last section, so my bad. I didn't think that it was going to be more. I think that, no, there's even more stuff. So there's more categories. I'm just jumping ahead of myself. So payloads will leverage a vulnerability on the target system. We kind of already talked about it. We will need a payload if we want to achieve our end result. So examples could be getting a reverse shell, right? Loading malware or backdoor to the target system, running a command, launching calc.exe as a proof of concept to add to the pentest report, running the calculator on the target system remotely by launching the calc.exe application is a benign way to show that we can run commands on their target system. So running commands on the target system is already an important step, but having an interactive connection that allows you to type commands that will be executed is even better. So such an interactive command line is called a shell. And Metasploit offers the ability to send different payloads that can open different shells. So we have these various types of payloads here. And so adapters wrap single payloads to convert them into different formats so that they adapt, right? A normal single payload can be wrapped inside a PowerShell adapter, which will make a single PowerShell command that will execute the payload. You can also think about it as the adapters that can connect different types of wirings to your computer or to your TV, right? That could technically be another way that we could look at adapters. Singles are self-contained payloads, for example, adding a user or launching Notepad, etc. They don't need to download an additional component to run, right? You can just launch Notepad as long as there's Notepad installed on the computer. Stagers are responsible for setting up a connection channel between Metasploit and the target system, and it's useful when working with staged payloads. So for example, staged payloads will first upload a stager on the target system, then download the rest of the payload, being the stage itself. And then this provides some advantages, as the initial size of the payload will be relatively small because it's the stager compared to the full payload that would be sent at once. And then you have the stages, so you have stagers, and then you have stages. And the stages are downloaded by the stager, and it'll allow you to use larger sized payloads. So Metasploit has a subtle way to help you identify these kinds of things. It's called inline, and these are inline payloads, single payloads, as well as staged payloads. So a generic shell reverse TCP, for example, or a Windows x64 shell reverse TCP, these could be both versions of them. But there's something to pay attention to. So they're reverse Windows shells, right? The former, being this one, is an inline or a single payload, and it's indicated by the underscore between shell and reverse, right? While the latter is a staged payload, and it's indicated by the / between shell and reverse. So you see it right here, shell and reverse right there, and shell and reverse right here. So it's separated either by the underscore or by the /. And so if it's separated by an underscore, we're looking as a single payload, right? It's an inline single payload. If it's indicated by the /, then it's a staged payload, meaning that it has multiple elements to it. So it'll have the stager and the stage, right? Post modules will be used in the final stage of the pen test because you will need to do post-exploitation, for example, privilege escalation. And again, these apply to Android, Apple iOS, BSD, Firefox, Linux, networking, Windows, etc. So if you wish to familiarize yourself with these modules, you can find them under the modules folder of the Metasploit installation. For the attack box that we're using, it's inside the optionals and inside Metasploit framework, embedded framework modules. That's where you can find it. But typically, wherever the Metasploit installation is, so whether or not it's in your opt or any other location, wherever this folder is, then the path is the same. You would go to embedded framework and modules, and you'll be able to find your modules. So now, what is the name of the code taking advantage of a flaw on the target system? And that would be what? Our exploit. What is the name of the code that runs on the target system to achieve the attacker's goal? And that is the payload. And what are self-contained payloads called? So I want to say that they are, is it inline? It's not, right? It's the self-contained payloads. We actually saw them right here. So they are known as a single payload, I guess, or an inline payload, as indicated by this, while the latter is a staged payload. And I want to say that the singles are not, no, okay, you know what? I think the staged ones are the ones that are self-contained. So let's see, we'll try them. We'll try both of the answers. Stagers, right? Stagers, nope. So inlines, nope. Singles, singles. Okay, singles are the same as inlines, so it's singles. And they are self-contained, right? They are a single payload that will run. Is Windows /x64 / pingback _ reverse TCP among singles or staged payloads? And so we know that if this portion right here is separated by an underscore, it is a single. So it would be a singles payload. All right, now let's get into the console. Okay, for this specific section, instead of just going through all the commands and kind of reading them, we're just going to run them inside of the Metasploit module. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this in full screen so we actually have access to our terminal. And I'm going to open this window inside of my second monitor so I can just refer to the commands. And from there, we're just going to run through each one of them, right? So we're basically going to go piece by piece. So the very first thing would be for us to actually call on Metasploit. So the way that we would do this is we would go ahead and actually type in Msfconsole inside of our terminal. So let me get like super zoomed in here. So we have Msfconsole. That's it. You just press enter on that, and then it starts running. And if you need to update it, it might say that, you know, you would need to run msf update to update it, but essentially it's still gonna run, right? It's still gonna go ahead and work, and it'll show you the full login, and it'll have like a nice little image that's created from code, which is kind of cool. But once we are in, the actual command line itself is going to change, meaning it's no longer going to be, so there we go, this one is now a duck. Very cool. Inside the documentation, it is a cow, I think. Yeah, it's a cow. So in this one, we have a duck. And so once it's completely fully loaded, we're going to see that the command line at the bottom is going to turn into MSF5 or MSF6, something like that. And once you see that, that indicates that it has fully loaded, right? So that's basically what we're waiting for right now. So I'm going to give it a couple of seconds for it to load. And there you go. It actually finished loading as soon as I finished my sentence. Okay, great. So what we can do now is we can run a variety of different commands while we are inside of this thing. So I think I can even do clear. There you go. So clear works here. So basically we start from the very, very top. So the very first command, right, could be ls, right? Because you can actually run ls while you're here. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to run ls as inside of the current location that you launched your terminal from. So technically, I was inside of this directory, inside of the root directory, right? Inside of my root directory, I have my desktop, I have my downloads, and all of those things. So I could technically even go into the desktop and do ls while I'm here, and it now shows additional tools, which is what you see in the background right here, and then network configs, which is what we see in the background. And then if I do pwd, now it shows me the new location that I am in, right? So it actually interacts with your computer. It interacts with your machine, very similar as if you were just sitting on the terminal of your machine by itself. So one of the things that we could actually do is basically run a ping command from where we are, right? So I could do ping, and I could do just a count of a 1 basically, because I just want only one ping to execute. And then we're going to send it to this like generic IP address. And so there you go. It actually ran the ping, and it retrieved 64 bytes from it. This was the time to live, etc., etc. One packet transmitted, one received. So very similar to running ping directly from your own command line, right? So, and then again, we've already established that we could just clear the screen as we want to, because it's as if you're just running on your own machine. You just have this Msfconsole that is working. So some of the things that we need to address is that you can't actually do output functions the normal way that you would. So if I wanted to do this, for example, and create a text file and just put help inside of the text file, there's no such thing that exists for this. So that part won't work. This whole forward arrow kind of a thing that goes into the help text file, that part won't work. However, if we wanted to use the actual help command and we wanted to use it on its own for a specific command, then we can actually do that. So there's something called set when you want to set values inside of individual modules. So you can do help and then you can do set, right? And it'll get you the help menu for the set command. And so it's basically set for the options and then the name and the value. And it will be using this in a little bit so you can kind of understand what that actually means. But it basically gives you, right, set the given option to the value. If the value is omitted, print the current value. If both are omitted, print options that are currently set, etc., etc. So that's how you pull up the help menu for a given command or a given portion of Metasploit. And then what's really nice is that we can go ahead and get the history of our commands. So these are just some of the things that I did, right? I did history, clear, help set, help this thing, and another clear. Then I did ping, and then I had another clear, print working directory, ls, I cd to my desktop, and you see, so pretty much all of this with the exception of this, because exit was the last piece that was ran right here. And then we can see that the last user that was logged in that was doing this, you know, they were looking for database status, and they were going into sessions and they were exploiting something, searching for exploits, searching for payloads, etc., etc. So they did a good amount of work while they were in here. They were doing some interesting things. So if you start typing and then you press the tab key, it'll actually help you with a lot of these things. So if I do HE and I press tab, it'll actually fill in help for me. And in a lot of cases, that actually can be very helpful because the autofill portion of these things can actually be very, very handy, especially when you have to fill in some longer form types of stuff. Msfconsole is managed by context. It means that unless you set a global variable, all the parameter settings will be lost if you change the module that you've decided to use, right? So just keep that in mind. There's nothing global here. It's managed by individual modules that you're using. So if we use the MS17010 Eternal Blue, for example, and we set the parameters for our hosts, right? Then if we went to switch to another one, and we would need to set the R host again because it'll change the value. So just to kind of give you an idea here. So this is what I usually do when I'm here. First, I'll do something like search, and then I'll do, let's say, Eternal Blue, right? Let's say that's the thing that I'm looking for. And then all of a sudden I get a bunch of things that are available here. And it could be the modules that we're looking for, or it could be some other recommended modules. So in this particular case, I'm looking for an exploit, Windows SMB MS17010 Eternal Blue, which is that very first one here. Now you see that it has an ID of 0, next one has ID of 1, 2, 3, and then this one has an ID of 10, etc., right? So if I wanted to use this one, I could do it in one of two ways. I could actually say use 0, or I could say use exploit Windows SMB MS, and then just fill in all of it, right? So you could actually do that. If you know exactly what you want, you don't even have to search for it. You could just say use this exploit and then just type it out. I'm going to do use 0. Now when I do this, the command line changes. So you can actually see now that my command line has this exploit set for its context. So now we're actually inside of the Eternal Blue exploit. So what we can do from here is we can set options or just start by showing the options. So show options. And now we're inside of the options for the Eternal Blue exploit, right? And just kind of as information, I guess, this was a part of an reconnaissance, like a U.S. national security, NSA kind of a development that they did for a vulnerability that was affecting the server message block version 1. So the servers on numerous Windows systems were using that version. And that SMB version 1 is widely used in Windows networks for file sharing and even for sending files to printers. So Eternal Blue was leaked by the cybercriminal group Shadow Brokers in 2017, in April of 2017, and in May of 2017, this vulnerability was exploited worldwide in the WannaCry ransomware attack. So this was a part of a really, really big ransomware attack that happened globally. It was a global attack that happened. So that's kind of just the background for this for you, okay? So what we can do now is we can look at the various options that we have. So anytime that you use an exploit, it's just a good habit to do show options. And then the ones that you're most interested in are the ones that are required. So for example, the remote host, our hosts, needs to be set. That's the target, right? So this is the target host that you want to assign. So it would be the IP address that you're trying to connect to, basically. The remote port is 445 by default because that is typically the default port for SMB. And then if you need an SMB user or an SMB password, you can actually input that here, but they are not required, right? So the required are the remote host IP, the remote port, and then you have verify architecture and verify target. Both of them are required, and they're both set to true, and you always want to just leave that. I never mess around with those. I'm mostly interested in just modifying the remote hosts. And then we have on this part right here, on the lower part, the listening host and the listening port, and that's your machine's IP address. So this is actually the IP address that's been assigned to my attack box right here. And so that's the IP address that I'm most interested in keeping right here. Now, if you actually have another IP for whatever reason that you want to use as your listening host that connects back to it, then you would use that IP address as well as the ports that you would be using to connect to. And that's pretty much it, right? So once you have established these commands or these specific addresses, then you're pretty much ready to go. So the one thing that I'm missing in this particular case is my R hosts, right? So I can just come down here and do set, right? And then I'm going to do set R hosts. And then I'm going to give it the IP address of the remote host. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. I have no idea if this is actually going to be the host that we're going to try to connect to, but I'm going to see. We're going to jump ahead and see if we can actually execute this. So we're going to set our host to this, and there you go. Now it says our host has actually been set to that. And then from here, now I can do one of two things. I can either do run or I can do exploit, right? There's also the option to change the payload if you wanted to. The current payload right here is the Windows x64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. That's the current payload that's set. So I'm just going to run it, see what it does. If it'll work, it'll work. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But we're just going to try to see if it actually connects. So now you can see that it's actually running everything. And the target is vulnerable. So these green marks that you see right here is like host is likely vulnerable. And then it says the target is vulnerable, and it tries to go, and then now it's sending the stage, and now we have an actual Meterpreter session. So the exercise was actually successful. My exploit was successful. Now I have a Meterpreter session. That means now I'm actually on the local machine. I'm on that target machine. I guess ls won't work for it. So maybe, oh, it does work, and there's a lot of stuff that it pulled. So okay, never mind. The reason why it took so long is because we're in a current directory that has a bunch of stuff in it. And so even though it's in a Windows directory, the ls command worked, right? Because ls is native to Unix and Linux, the ls command still worked. So if I do print working directory, it tells me that I'm inside the Windows system 32, which is why it explains why we have so many things here. So if we go into the root folder here, right? So if we go to the C and do a print working directory here, operation failed, it can't find the file specified. So what did I do? Did I do something incorrectly? So print working directory, that's where I am. So cd dot dot. Now where am I? Okay, now I'm here. So maybe the other piece didn't work, right? Okay, now that makes a little bit more sense. So we are now inside of the root directory. There we go. The actual main directory. Now we have the program files. We also have users. So let's go into users and see which users we have here. We have all users, default, John, public, and desktop, etc., etc. So I'm not going to jump too far ahead because I feel like I'm going to need to do this at some point to go ahead and like capture one of the flags or something, or retrieve one of the flags. But you can see that we have completed a very solid command, and we were able to complete the exploit, and now we were able to actually get into the target machine, right? It's kind of crazy when you really think about it. So we will kind of log back out of this. So I think it's back. So maybe not back. Is it exit? It's exit. Okay, so there you go. When you're inside of the actual exploit itself and you want to, or when you're inside of the session, right? So we're actually inside of a session right there. So when we're inside the session and we want to get out of the session, we're going to use exit. When we're inside of an exploit, we can just do back, and then it'll go back to the main portion. I do want to show you a few other things real quick. So if I do show payloads, it'll show me all the available payloads for this specific exploit, and you can see that there's a lot of stuff that's available here. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. And then there's also info that will actually give you the info of the exploit that you're using, right? So who developed it, what the options are and what the requirements are, the available targets that you can attack with it, etc. So it has a lot of good information about it, and it even shows you all the options for it. So far we've had a chance to search for modules. We've had a chance to look up the information of a module, set the options of a module, and you can even, so if I go back here, we can actually even go and get even more information about these things. So there's something really, really interesting about them. So if we actually do I'll do this as the search, for example. So 010, and then we'll do command. So if we do this, the list is shorter compared to the last one. And then there's something right here for the ranking. So you see how there's a normal ranking. These rankings can actually go from excellent to great to normal to manual or low. And usually if it's ranked excellent, it means that it's never going to crash the service that you're targeting. And this would be really good for SQL injection or CMD execution, remote file inclusion, local file inclusion, etc. Right? So no typical memory corruption exploits would be given this kind of a ranking, the excellent ranking. And then we have a great ranking and a good ranking, and it basically just kind of goes down from there, obviously, right? So if it's great, the exploit has a default target and either auto detects the appropriate target or uses an application specific return address. If it's good, then it has a target default and it's the common case. And you know what? It's probably easier for me to actually show you this instead of just kind of reading it out loud to you. I feel like some people are just more visual and they're a little bit more used to this kind of stuff. So this is it, right? So we have excellent, great, good, normal, average, etc. And so it starts out from up here. And so the one that we were using is a normal ranked exploit. It's otherwise reliable, but depends on a specific version and can't or doesn't reliably auto detect. So the one that we were using relies on a specific version of Windows in order for it to work. Otherwise, it just won't work, right? Because the vulnerability for WannaCry and the vulnerability for Eternal Blue were patched. They were fixed a long time ago. So you can then direct the search function using keywords like the type or platform. So for example, you can search for a type of auxiliary for Telnet, right? So you're going to search through all the auxiliaries to try to find something that has to do with Telnet, and then you'll find a list of stuff. So a really good amount of stuff is available when you actually use the tools that you have at your disposal when you're searching for something, when you're trying to find information for something. And if you have the time and if you have the energy and you just want to get good at it, the thing that I would recommend is to search through all of the auxiliaries and go look at the information, right? Search through all the payloads and exploits and go pull up their information and see what they do and what's required of them. What is their purpose? How can they be of use to you in your journey as a pen tester? And that would be the big thing that I could recommend. There's nothing that I can teach you in a video that would cover everything for Metasploit. Metasploit can have its own masterclass. You know what I mean? There can be so many. There are hundreds of various modules, probably thousands of modules that are available inside of Metasploit. And so this is one of those things that you are constantly learning about, and the better you get at it, the more you realize that you don't know enough and you can still stand to learn more. This is one of those tools, and by the time that you think you've learned everything, they're going to update it, and then there's going to be more stuff added to it that you will have to learn. So this is a very, very powerful tool, and it's really, really useful. So just remember, the exploits take advantage of a vulnerability on the target system and may always show unexpected behavior. A low-ranking exploit may work perfectly, and an excellent ranked exploit may not, or worse, it may crash the target system, which will be a dead giveaway that something is wrong, and then they're going to start looking for what went wrong and then start patching it. So we want to search for a module related to Apache. So what would we do? We would do search, and then we would do Apache, just like that. Who provided the auxiliary scanner, SSH, etc. module? So let's go over here. We're just going to copy this, and then we're going to go inside our terminal, and we're going to search for that, right? So search for this piece. So I'm going to paste that, press enter. There should only be, there's two of them. Okay, so there's the public key version as well. And then there's the I would say probably the first one is what they're looking for. So we're going to do use 0. And then once we're here, we're going to look for info. And what we're looking for is the author, I'm guessing, right? So module, license, rank, normal, provided by TODB, Todd B from Metasploit. So Todd B, shout out to Todd B at Metasploit. And that should be the answer. So let's wait for it to give us the green light here. All right, so now we get to talk about working with the modules. And honestly, I really jumped ahead earlier. So most of this you've already been exposed to. So when we want to use a module, we're going to do the use command and then give it the actual name of the module. And then we'll do show options and then set a parameter value. And all of that stuff we literally just did. So from the command prompt, you would do Msfconsole. You would enter MSF, and this is what it would look like. And then you would use an exploit, and this is what it would look like. And then once you've successfully launched it, that's what it would look like. And then you would actually get to see that you are inside of the Windows system, for example, right? So that's literally we talked about all of these things. So I definitely jumped the gun a little bit, but it was an easy way to explain it. I feel like it was just kind of one of those things that it was a natural progression of explanation. So you're just now kind of getting review here. So very, very easy. But all of this you've seen already. So we saw the options. We know that it's, default port is 445. We know that we have to set the R hosts, and the L host is automatically assigned to our machine, etc. Right? So in the screenshot above, some of the parameters require a value. So the ones that are required that have a yes, right? Some of them don't. So you just need to check to see which one actually is really applicable to you. So a web exploit would have an R port, which is the remote port on the target Metasploit to connect to the port 80, which is the web port, right? It's the HTTP port. But the target web application would be using port 8080, for example. So we're going to set our hosts to the IP address of the target system, and then we want to set using the set command, which is exactly what we did. And then the show options will show, I didn't do this part, so there you go, that's the part. So once we actually set it, if you run show options again, it'll actually show that the R host has now been set to that address. So let's do that one more time. So we're going to go back into the exploit that we had previously. So not the one that we're in right now. We want to go back here, and then we want to search for eternal blue, and it was the very first one, right? Yeah, use 0. So that's the very first one that we want. And then so we have show options here, and it'll show us these are all the options, etc. And it's actually already set the R hosts here because I've used it before. So we can see that we actually have the R host parameter set. If I were to use a different module and look at the R hosts for that module, it would be empty. But because I've already used this one and I've already set it, then it shows that it's been filled in. So that's great. That's actually very handy for us. So once you've set a parameter, you can use show options to check that it was done correctly. This is what a screenshot of it would actually look like right here for us. So, you know, concatenating our targets, you can actually have a text file that would be your target. And then you can go over here and you can set the text file, right? So the R host right here, you can see that. R host has actually been set to a file. So it can actually even carry a list of IDs over here or a list of IP addresses over here, and they would show up for you. And then so if you look over to the R host parameter here, and the R host parameter will actually have the file to the targets. So you can actually use a list of targets as well if you're not sure exactly which one would yield you the most successful result. So that's for our host. We've already talked about our port. The payload is what you're going to be using in conjunction with the exploit. The L host is your local host, meaning your attacking machine. Local port, meaning the port that you're going to be listening to, that the reverse shell will be connecting back to. And then the session. So each connection that's established generates a session. And then this is really useful for post-exploitation because you can leave the session active. You don't have to exit the session, but you background the session. And once you have that, you can then go ahead and refer to that session using a different module for post-exploitation. So we'll be talking about that in later segments. So you can unset all of the parameters that you've set, and then you can do show options, and then you can see that everything has been unset for you, right? So that's another way that you can just kind of set everything back to default. And then finally, you can set a global variable. So set G will actually work very similar to the set command. The difference is that if you use the set command, it only works inside of the module that you did. And then if you use another module, you need to use the set command again. If you do set G, it allows you to set it so that it can be used by default across multiple things. So I refer to it as set global, right? So set G or unset G will set or unset your global parameters, your global variables. So we're going to use, in this particular example, they're using the MS17 Eternal Blue. They're setting the hosts variable using the set G instead of set. And then we use back. And then if we use an auxiliary module and show the options, we can see that it's already using that same IP address. So, I mean, the concept behind it should be fairly simple. They did set G, and then they set it to this IP address. And then this is the IP address that was set for this. And then they left it and they moved to a scanner, for example. And then they did show options. And now the R host is, again, that same IP address that was up here, right? So it sets a global variable, a global value. And you can use it until you exit Metasploit or until you clear it using the unset G command. So once you've set everything, you can then go ahead and run exploit, right? And it also works when you do run. Basically, they do the same exact thing. And you can do this in the background, or so without any parameters, I should say, using the -z parameter. So my apologies, it's not the background, it's just the -z. We'll run it, and, or you know what, I was right. See, I knew I was right. So it says the exploit command can be used without any parameters or using the -z parameter. That I misread this. So if you use the -z parameter, then it'll background the session as soon as it opens. I was totally right. I should give myself more credit for these things. So they do exploit -z, it runs, and then at the very, very end of it, the Meterpreter session has been opened, and then session 2 was created in the background, and it goes back into the exploit instead of showing Meterpreter. And then so you can then go ahead and reactivate that session by actually referring to your sessions. So when you're inside of a Meterpreter, you can just background it using background, and then from there, it'll background the session and it puts you back inside the exploit. And then you can actually do Control-Z as well to do that. And then when you want to refer to it, so this is now inside of the exploit, you do sessions and it shows you your sessions. And then from there, you can do sessions 1, for example, or session 1, and it'll actually activate the first session and it'll throw you back inside of the Meterpreter, for example. So sessions -I followed by the desired number. So sessions -I 2 will give you this Meterpreter session. So sessions dash I followed by the number, and it'll create or interactivate, I guess, that session number. And that's pretty much it. So I wonder if we are going to capture a flag. We're not going to capture a flag. Nope, it seems like we're not capturing a flag. We could have, because we got that Meterpreter session active, so we could have definitely done that, but they are not requiring us to get a flag. So you got some extra information compared to anybody else that may have gone through this room without this video. So now you know how to get a Meterpreter session and rummage around the target machine. So how would you set the listening port to 6666? So you want to do what? You want to set L port and then 6666. There you go. How would you set the global value for our hosts to that? So you would do set G, right? And then you would do our hosts and then 10, 10, 1, 9, 23, like that. What command would you use to clear a set payload? So it would be unset and then payload, and that's how you would do that. And what command do you use to proceed with the exploitation phase? So in this case, they're looking for exploit, but you could technically use run as well, and it'll still do what you want it to do. And with that, my dear friend, we have officially finished the introduction to Metasploit. So what we did inside of this video is we went and, first of all, we just kind of figured out how Metasploit works, right? We clicked around, we typed around, and we looked at the various modules that are available inside of Metasploit. We looked at how we can activate an exploit, right, by just using the use and then giving the name of the exploit or giving the ID that's associated with that exploit after you search for it. We learned how to look for the information of the creator. We learned how to set the parameters, set the options of an exploit. We learned how to run the exploit and actually achieve the official shell, the final connection to the target machine. And we did all of that in the introduction video. So imagine what it's going to be like when we go through the rest of the videos for Metasploit. And this is a very, very powerful tool. I'm telling you, there, as you saw in the very beginning, we have modules for iOS, we have modules for Android, for Windows, for Linux, for Unix, and for a dozen other things. So there are so many things that you can do with Metasploit, and this is one of the biggest, most popular tools when it comes down to pen testing. People who want to go into penetration testing or ethical hacking, this is the thing that they look for. This is the thing that they want to master. And companies that are looking for people to hire as ethical hackers or pen testers, put them on salary kind of a thing, those companies will also really, really want for you to have Metasploit knowledge. So that's one of the big things that I can tell you about this. And if you are interested in becoming a pen tester, which I would assume you are because you're watching this video and you're inside of the junior pen tester pathway. So if you're interested in this stuff, then I would highly recommend that you stay tuned as we go through the rest of the videos for Metasploit. Alright, if you found this video useful and if you would like to get more videos like this one, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this path being Junior Pen Tester, or on CompTIA Pentest Plus, or on AI for cybersecurity, or on fill in the blank. There's going to be a lot of different stuff that's going to come out, and it's continually going to keep publishing. My schedule right now, the consistency has been Monday through Friday, there's going to be at least one post. And then when I get ahead of the game a little bit, what's going to happen is that I'm going to be posting probably multiple times a day, or maybe I'll just have like a backlog of content that's just going to be queued and scheduled to publish. I'm not exactly sure, but there is regular content development that's happening, and this channel is very, very active. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. If you have any requests for content, drop it in the comment section. There have been playlists that have been developed because people commented and requested for it. So definitely drop it. And somebody recently, as early as today, requested the concepts or content around AI and prompt engineering and the large language models and all of that good stuff. So all of that is in the near future. And of course, I am very, very excited to actually hear from you but it won't work unless you've actually liked, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And so you can browse through the content that is available over here. These are all the playlists that, or the, not all the playlists, but I would say like the bigger playlists, the more important playlists, the ones that have gotten really popular. So for example, Pentest Plus right here, we have Network Plus is completed. Pentest Plus is on its way to being finished, but it's not fully finished, but people are using it to pass their examinations. I actually have a recent comment. There we go. This is actually a comment that came in. You know, watch the Pentest Plus course, and I've been following with the videos every few days. Finally passed the Pentest Plus exam and graduated the degree program. Thank you for your hard work, etc., etc. So all of these things, these are, look, Kevin passed his Pentest Plus exam as well. And then we have, what is it? This was Mona the Istik. I can't pronounce that name that well. I just know that it's Mona. Mona got a job at SpaceX. You know, there's so many great things. There are so many great stories that are coming out from the community, and I'm just super excited to have people involved and to be able to play a part in people's lives like that. So what I encourage you to do is try to find the content that's most relevant to you and study hard and develop a portfolio and do all the things that you would need to do if you're really interested in cybersecurity and you want to get into this world. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. And if you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. It's your boy Hank Hackers, and at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next video later. In today's episode of the Junior PenTester Pathway, we're going to go through the Metasploit exploitation room that is available inside of the Metasploit module of TryHackMe. In the Metasploit exploitation room, the key things that we're going to be looking at is using Metasploit for vulnerability scanning, or I guess I should say reconnaissance scanning, as well as vulnerability assessments, and ultimately exploitation, actually using all of the information that we've gathered to execute an exploit. Now, the introduction is as always, right? So there's always going to be an introduction to these videos, and then there's going to be scanning, the Metasploit database itself, vulnerability scanning, exploitation, Msfvenom, which is a very powerful module inside of Metasploit, or I guess it's one of the extensions of Metasploit that we can use to create payloads. And of course, we're going to be going for a summary at the very end, some final thoughts and reviews and things like that. And this is a subscriber-only room that's available inside of TryHackMe. However, if you just download Metasploit on your own computer, you can launch all of the exercises as we will go ahead and go through them today. So you won't necessarily need a paid subscription to TryHackMe, although I will say that is totally worth the money. This room was developed on the TryHackMe platform by Strategos, one of our favorite creators. This particular person has been responsible for a lot of really good rooms available inside of TryHackMe, and we've done a lot of videos, tutorial type stuff for all the stuff that Strategos has created. So big shout out to Strategos. And that is pretty much it. All of the timestamps are going to be available in the description below, as always. And I just want to give you a quick little introduction to Hackaholics Anonymous, and then we will dive deep into it. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the Metasploit exploitation video. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be learning how to use Metasploit for vulnerability scanning and exploitation. And we're also going to cover how the database feature makes it easy to manage penetration testing engagements with a broader scope. And we will finally look at generating some payloads with Msfvenom and how to start a Meterpreter session on most target platforms. And we've actually used Msfvenom in a variety of other videos on this channel, all targeted for pen testing, all targeted for pen testing. And Msfvenom is one of the quicker ways to actually create payloads using the Metasploit framework without actually having to launch the Metasploit framework, meaning you don't need to launch it, get into the command line of Metasploit, and then create a payload. You can literally just, from your normal command line, run a Msfvenom command, and from there you can generate a payload that you can then transfer to your target machine and do a variety of other things. So the topics that we're going to cover are how to scan target systems using Metasploit, how to use Metasploit Database feature, how to use Metasploit to conduct a vulnerability scan, how to use Metasploit to exploit vulnerable services on target systems, and of course, how Msfvenom can be used to create payloads and obtain a Meterpreter session, which is essentially like a reverse shell or a remote shell on your target system. For the purposes of this particular video, the word list that we're going to be using is going to be on this specific pathway in the attack box that I've already launched. However, if you are using your own machine and then you're going to use OpenVPN to connect to TryHackMe, then you would go ahead and download that word list using that little blue button saying download task files. I'm going to be using the browser attack box, so that part is going to be pretty straightforward for me. I don't need to do that, but again, if you want to do it on your own computer and then use the OpenVPN service so that you can connect to TryHackMe servers, then you would go ahead and download those task files so that you can actually run all the exercises from your own computer. That being said, we are officially good to go. I think all of the attack box, oh wow, there's like sound effects that they're adding to all these things now. So I guess every correct answer or every button that I press is going to give us a little ding 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 chime kind of a thing. So that's gonna get some. It's gonna take some getting used to. But yeah, so we're good with the introduction. We can now jump into the scanning portion. All right, so there are going to be multiple virtual machines that we're going to be using, and this is the first one. It's already up and running, and we're going to be using the one of the variety of different modules that are available inside of Metasploit, and this one in particular is called the port scan module. So as always, if you have not seen the last video, by the way, so this would be a really good time to kind of pause and go watch that previous video, because we go over how to use the very basics and fundamentals of the Metasploit framework. In particular, the search specific phrase right here, and we're using search and then we're looking for port scan, and then it brings up a variety of different options for us that all fall under port scanning. And so we can use any one of them. So in this particular case, they're using the scanner port scan TCP, and it's an auxiliary. So scanner port scan TCP, I think is this one right here. And so, I'm going to actually just do this just to kind of show it to you, because I feel like it's easier to show you instead of having to explain it and then trying to decipher it or reverse engineer it with my verbal explanation. So this is basically what it looks like, right, when you have your virtual machine, and then we would go to Msfconsole to actually launch Metasploit console, and it takes a few seconds for it to load. So while that's loading in the background, essentially what they've done here is they've used this TCP port scanner, okay? And then once you're inside of the TCP port scanner, what you'll see is that your command line actually changes. So previously it's this, right? This is what it looks like. Then you can see that the auxiliary has now been added to the command line, and then now we are technically inside of this module, okay? So then you do show options just to see all the various options available and which ones are required. And this one in particular has a bunch of things that are required, and most of them have already been established for you. They've already been pre-configured. The only thing that has not been pre-configured is the remote host, which is basically the target that you want to be scanning, and it is required, so we need to set remote hosts, and from there you can go ahead and basically run it, right? So a few things to note here are the concurrency, so this number of targets to be scanned simultaneously. And in this particular case, you can actually have 10 targets to be scanned simultaneously. The ports range to be scanned, 1 to 1,000, will not be the same as using Nmap with the default configuration. Nmap will scan the 1,000 most used ports, while Metasploit will scan port numbers 1 to 10,000. Or it says 10,000 here, but this one says 1,000. So right here it says ports 1 to 10,000. So I think the default is going to scan the first 10,000 ports. Our host would be the target, and threads would be the number of threads that will be used simultaneously. More threads will result in a faster scan, but at the same time, it also makes your activity louder so that when there's some kind of an antivirus or a firewall or intrusion detection system, what that'll do is it'll set it off. It's more likely to set it off if you have more threads running at the same time. You can directly perform Nmap scans from the Msfconsole as well. So once you're inside of MSF framework, you can actually just do Nmap just like you would normally. And we did several videos on Nmap, so if you haven't seen those, go check them out. And then you can actually run Nmap scans directly from inside of Metasploit, which is actually really handy. And, for information gathering, if the engagement requires a speedier approach to port scanning, Metasploit may not be your first choice. However, a number of modules make Metasploit a useful tool for the scanning phase. And then we have the UDP Service Identification Scanner. So Scanner Discovery UDP Sweep will allow you to quickly identify services running over UDP. And you can see that this will not conduct an extensive scan of all possible UDP services, but does provide a quick way to identify services such as DNS or NetBIOS. And then we have the server message block scans as well. That's, again, another auxiliary that you can run to try to get things like the enumeration of the various shares or the version of server message block that's running currently. And when performing service scans, it would be important not to omit more exotic services like NetBIOS. NetBIOS, which is the network basic input-output system, similar to SMB, allows the computer to communicate over the network to share files or send files to printers. And the name of the target system can give you an idea about its role and even the importance of it. So, if it's a corporate domain controller, for example, or the DevOps teams or the sales teams, So you may also run across some shared files and folders that could be accessed either without a password or protected with a simple password, for example, admin, right, or administrator or root, tour, etc. These are like very, very basic default passwords that all show up on the RockU password list. So those are really, really easy to guess. And then it has many modules that can help you have a better understanding of the target system and possibly help you find vulnerabilities. It's always worth performing a quick search to see if there are any modules that could be helpful based on your target system. So how many ports are open on the target system? So now we can actually do our quick little port scanner, or we can even use Nmap really, but let's actually use this little auxiliary port scanner, right? So if we go here, and we're already inside Metasploit, it's already up and running. So if I do, I can do clear, so very similar to everything else that's inside of Linux. What's nice with Metasploit is that it integrates with the rest of your command line as well. So you have all the stuff that's native to Metasploit, but then it also actually works with your command line. So if I did ls, it'll actually list the stuff inside of my working directory, which is the root directory, right? So it actually works with the machine that you're in as well as the Metasploit framework. So anyways, that being said, now we can search for port scan, and what we want to do is find the TCP one. I think that's the one that we're working for. So this is what I was trying to show you earlier. So instead of doing, use auxiliary and then type out this whole thing so that we can get into it, what you can do is you could literally just do use and then give it the number that's associated with that option. So for example, number 5. And then it'll turn it into the auxiliary port scanner for me. So you can see that right here. Now we're inside of the port scanner auxiliary, right? So we do show options. Obviously, we need to set the R hosts. So another thing that we can do is we could do set R hosts and then give it the IP address of our target, which in this case is this one. And so I can just paste that here, press enter, and now our host has been set. Now, what's interesting or what's cool about this is that, this is previous version of the option. So if I do show options again, what you will see, if I can type it right, is that now our host is actually set to our target. So we are good to go. So I can just do run, or I can do exploit, whichever one is more likely for you or you know, whatever you like. I like doing the quicker version, so you just do run, and then you press enter, and it actually runs it. And so there you go. Now we get to see all these ports that are open, right? So 21, 22, 139, 445, etc., etc., etc. And then we're just going to give it a minute so that it can finish scanning, and we'll have a full list of open ports. All right, cool. There we go. Our scan is done, and we can see what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ports that are open. And I guess we could have done the same exact thing with nmap, but let's see if that's the number. Oh my, this is gonna take a while of getting used to, and I think I should lower the volume of the system, because I think that gets kind of loud on your end, like when you watch this stuff. So I have now lowered the volume of the system, and hopefully it won't overshadow the mic, and it won't be too loud in your ears. So I apologize for that. All right, using the relevant scanner, what net BIOS name can you see? So we're going to be enumerating the net BIOS. So what is the relevant scanner here? So we have, when performing service scans, it can be important to omit more exotic services like this. And so similar to SMB allows the computer. So what we want is a net BIOS scanner. And I want to say that we could just kind of search for that. So here's how this works, right? So let's just kind of modify this here. So we can do this in one of two ways. So first of all, you can just go ahead and type in back, and it'll take you out of the current module that you're in, and then we can do search net BIOS and see what shows up. Okay, cool. So auxiliary scanner, net BIOS, there you go, NB name. That could be the thing that we could do. Net BIOS spoof and net BIOS spoof again. So I definitely think we need this thing to get the net BIOS name. So we'll go ahead and use number 2 here, and let's look at the options, and well, just basic rhost is what we need to set. So I know that anything that I highlight gets replaced, so it gets saved, and that's one of the things I don't like about the Linux terminal, but whatever. So we will do set rhost again, and in this particular case, we're going to be setting it to this specific thing, so we can do show options again, and there you go, there it is under rhost. So now we can just run it, and let's see how quickly this will bring our result up. And what we're looking for is just the net BIOS name, right? Is that what it is? It says relevant scanner, what net BIOS name can you see? Yeah, that's basically it. So I will give it a few seconds, see how long this takes for us to get the net BIOS name. Okay, so there it is. It took maybe like 5 more seconds after I stopped talking. And so this is the line that we're most interested in, the one with the green plus sign right here. And so this is what it is, right? So this is the IP address of it, etc., etc. And then this is what we have, Acme IT support. That is the net BIOS name. So we can just go and paste that over here. What is running? Oh my God, that's just I'm gonna lower it some more, just in case, because I don't know how loud that is on your end. But I still, I'm just gonna get used to it. I just gotta remember that it makes that noise. Okay, what is running on port 8000? That's what we're trying to do here. So technically, what we can do is we can just run nmap, and let's see, nmap, and then we'll do the 10.10.93 111, and then give it the port 8000, because that's the one that we're most interested in. So it says HTTP alt is what's running on that. So I think that might be it, right? Or do I need a version for this as well? It looks like I need a version for it as well, right? So what is running on HTTP? Yeah, it looks like I need a version. Okay, so what we can do then, in this case, we can do the service scan as well. So if we do a SV, lowercase s capital V, it'll give us the service version of that specific port. So let's see what version shows up for this HTTP alternate port here. So we have WebFS HTTPD 1.21. So WebFS, right? I think that's what they're looking for. And then 1.21, like that. Yeah, there you go. Okay, cool. What is the Penny user's SMB password? Use the word list mentioned in the previous task. So we need to now go ahead and use the SMB list of things. So we can do SMB enum shares, SMB version. Metasploit offers several used for auxiliary to scan for specific devices. Below is the SMB, and what we're trying to do is, I guess, trying to get the enum shares maybe, or enum users. So let's see what is available for SMB. I hope there aren't too many. I feel like there are going to be many. Yeah, 446. Jesus. Okay, so maybe not just SMB. So doing a search for SMB underscore enum, and we get SMB enum users domain, and then we get enum shares and enum users as well. So I'm going to try the third one, and let's see what the options are for this. So we definitely need an rhost. It's not required, interestingly enough, but we do need an rhost. And the username to authenticate as the password for the specified username. We might even be able to do a file maybe for the SMB password. So that might be interesting. So first, let's get the SMB IP real quick. So we're going to go ahead and set the rhosts to the IP and press enter there. And then we're going to set the SMB user to Penny. Is it Penny with a Y or was it IE? It was Penny with a Y. Okay, so Penny with a Y is the SMB user. So let's do show options here. I hope we can do a password file, because that would be great if we could actually do that. Okay, so there you go. There's the user. So if I do the password file, which was the path to that specific file that we had here, which is this thing right here. So if I just use this as my path for the password file, I think that might work. Not exactly sure. This is kind of a 50-50 shot right here. So SMB pass, I'm going to set to this path. And it didn't give me any error message. So, okay, so for the password, we now have a word list of passwords. And okay, that's pretty much it. So we're just gonna do run. Let's see if this works. Login failed. Status login. The attempted login is invalid. That is either due to bad username or authentication information. Okay, fair enough. So that's not gonna work. So let's go back and we will do another search for SMB enum, and let's see which one I can use here. I might have to do some Googling. Okay, so I searched for SMB and the keyword login, and I wonder if there's something that works for us here. So it says auxiliary scanner SMB login. That might be the best one in our case. So we're going to use number 20 here. And if we do show options, let's see. It says user pass file. There you go. Okay, cool. So there you go. So there's a user pass file that we can do. So we can actually set the SMB user to be Penny, right? There we go. And then we can do show options again to make sure, yeah, okay, there you go. And now we can do the set user pass file to this password file once again. And I hope that one actually works, because it says that we can technically do that. So set user pass file to the path of this file, and there you go, that's set correctly as well. So show me the options, and user pass file worked, Penny worked. And did we do the IP address? I think I need to obviously set the rhosts. Yeah, so there we go. I need to set the rhost to this IP address again. So set rhosts to our IP address, and let's click run, and let's see if this works. Okay, I did that incorrectly. So I was supposed to set the pass file, not the user pass file, because the user pass file contains users and passwords. So that is my bad. So we're going to unset the user pass file and unsetting it. So let me make sure that that's all good. Okay, very good. Okay, so yeah, I totally did that incorrectly. It's not the file containing users and passwords that we want to set. It's the file that's only passwords, and that would be the pass file right here, containing passwords 1 per line. So we're going to do set pass file, and hopefully, of course, that's what it's going to remember. So now we got to go and copy this one more time. But yes, I feel like this one will actually work because now I actually have the right option that I'm going to be setting. I also got to put my phone on silent because I don't know if you hear those little clicks in the background. Okay, so here we go, running it. Let's see if it works. There we go. Okay, so now it's actually correctly running, and it's running for all of the combinations with Penny and then the various passwords. So let's see what it is. Let's see what the password for Penny is. All right, there it is. Penny Leo 1234 was successful. So what are we going to say? We're going to say Leo. Wait, let's go back to the right task here. So we're going to go to the Leo 1234 is Penny's password. Is it? It should be. And there's that stinking sound. Okay, so there we go. All right, we got it. Now let's go through the Metasploit database. Now this is just an extra one of those features that makes Metasploit so freaking fully functioning. So this is not a requirement to interact with a single target on TryHackMe or using Metasploit really, but it has a database function to simplify project management, avoid possible confusion when you're setting up parameter values. So the following steps have already been taken in my specific attack box. So you will only need to do this if you're using Kali or have installed Metasploit yourself in particular, right? So for my particular attack box that I'm using, this has already been done. But if you're using your own version of Kali and then you're using OpenVPN to connect to TryHackMe, or you're using your own version of Kali and you have Metasploit installed on your computer and you want to try this, then you would need to go through this. So the first thing that you would need to do is you need to initiate the PostgreSQL database. And you would do this by doing systemctl start PostgreSQL. And then you'll need to initialize the database using the MSFDB, so Metasploit Framework Database in it, right? So trying to run MSF in it as root will give you an error message. So please running it as a non-root user is basically what it's going to say. So do PostgreSQL using sudo -u and then Postgres MSFDB in it is the full command. So this is basically what it looks like. And then once you're done, I guess, if you're interested in repeating them, we can actually do the delete command using Postgres delete, and then you can just repeat the whole thing. I'm not going to do that because this is basically what it will look like if you were to do it from start to finish. So you're inside of your own machine. You're not inside of the Msfconsole, number one. So then you would do systemctl start PostgreSQL. Once it's actually started, you do sudo -u Postgres and then MSFDB in it. And then it basically runs it, etc., success, and then it's done. So creating initial database schema, database initialization successful, and then we can do Msfconsole and actually get into it and then do a DB status to see if it's actually been connected. If it has, then we can create workspaces to isolate different projects. When we do it, we can be inside of the default workspace at the very, very beginning, and you can list available workspaces using the workspace command. So if you just type that in, it'll say what workspace you are in, and in this particular case, it's just the default one. So you can add a workspace using the -a parameter or delete one using the -d. So A for add and D for delete. And the screenshot will show you. So workspace A, TryHackMe, it'll add workspace, TryHackMe, and then it'll actually automatically activate that workspace for you as well. So you'll be outside of the default and you'll be inside of the new workspace being TryHackMe. So the new database name is printed in red. I guess it's supposed to be in red in this particular case, starting with the asterisk symbol. and workspace default will change it back to default, right? So if you're in TryHackMe, because it's activating whatever you've just created, it'll just activate that as your current workspace. So if you want to switch back to any other one, you can just do workspace default, and then it'll switch it back to that one or any other one that you have chosen. You can do workspace-H to list the available options, which is basically the help menu that you would have over here, and it shows you all of these wonderful things like verbose output or switch and add and delete, etc. And then you can use Metasploit once it's actually launched with the workspace. The help command will show the database backend commands menu. So this is what it actually looks like, database backend commands. And you have a variety of other commands available for databases, so you can mess with those. And you can run nmap using the db nmap, which is what it looks like over here. So db nmap, and then just doing the rest of it as if you were normally running it. But essentially what it does is that it uses nmap with the database function, right? So all the results will be saved to the database. So db_nmap will run this specific command, and then all of the outputs will be stored inside of the current workspace that you're in. So you can reach information relevant to hosts and services running on the target system with the hosts and services command respectively. So just do hosts, and it'll show you the list of the hosts. You can do services. It'll show you the list of all of the services for that specific host that you just scanned. So just keep this in mind, right? This is the host that we just scanned, and using this command, now all of these things will be saved inside of the workspace that we're in. So all of these ports basically are services. You see that? And so you can do hosts to pull up the list of the host, and then you can do services, and it'll pull up all of the services for all of the hosts, by the way. So you could have multiple hosts that you've scanned already, and when you run it, it'll show you that for this host, this is the service, port, etc. And then so after this, there could be another host that you would have scanned that will have its own services like that. So the host-H and services-H can help you become more familiar by getting you the help menus for those. And once the host information is stored in the database, you can use the host-R to add this to the rhosts parameter. So in the example workflow, we'll use the vulnerability scanning module that finds potential MS17 vulnerabilities with use auxiliary scanner SMB MS17, set the rhost value using the hosts-R, and it'll add all of the hosts that we have, right? And we've typed show options to check all the values that were assigned correctly. In this example, this is the IP address that we have scanned earlier using the db nmap. And once all the parameters are set, we can actually run it or exploit. So we can see this. We're using this exploit, and now we're inside of the exploit. Then we do hosts-R, and it'll actually set the rhosts variable, or rhost parameter, I should say, to the host that we scanned earlier using nmap. So if we do show options again, we can actually now see that the rhost has been set to the host that was scanned earlier. Then we run it, and then it'll run this auxiliary against that specific host. If there's more than one host saved, all IP addresses will be used when you do this specific command. So in a typical pen testing engagement, we could have the following scenario. You have available hosts using db nmap and scanning all these for vulnerabilities or open ports. So technically what you could actually do is db nmap and then do, let's go up here just so you can kind of see it a little bit. I just want you to see what it would look like. Where is it? Right here. So usually what you can do is if you're scanning a specific subnet, you would set the subnet, which is the 10.10.12, and then this last piece would be put at a 0 value, and then you would do /24 at the end of it, saying that you've designated the first 24 bits, so the octets, right? 3 octets have been set, and then the last one that where would be that 0 is left open, so you want to scan everything inside of that subnet to see how many hosts you can find. And then from there, it would be stored inside of all of your hosts inside of that workspace. And then when you do everything else right here, it would actually run it against all of those hosts, right? So when you do the hosts-R command at the very beginning right here, when you do this command, it'll actually set the host variable or parameter, excuse me. I keep saying variable. Same thing basically, but it would send this, set this R host to all of the hosts that were actually scanned and stored inside of your workspace. So then when you continue with it, you can have something like this, right? Find all the available hosts using DBN map, scan them for further vulnerabilities or open ports, and the service command used with -S will allow you to search for specific services. So you can do services -S net BIOS, and then it'll search for every one of your hosts that has potentially net BIOS service available inside of its list of services. So you can look for low-hanging fruits like HTTP, FTP, SMB, SSH, RDP. All of these things can actually serve as low-hanging fruit for you, and then that will allow you to, hopefully find some things that are easily exploitable. So Metasploit has many features to aid in engagements, like the ability to compartmentalize the engagement into workspaces, analyze your results at a high level, and quickly import and explore data. So there are no really specific questions for us here. It's just a lot of good read through that we got, a lot of good information. And we can even go check to see what our current workspace is right here inside of my initialization of Metasploit. So let's do a quick little clear screen, and we'll go back, and then we'll do workspace like that, right? Or workspaces, or I guess workspace. Let's do that. Or I think it was it wasn't workspace. No, I'm looking at the wrong command here. I think it's the database. That's what I'm trying to do. But it's supposed to say workspace. So the actual workspace command should have actually worked, because it said that my database should be fine. So let's do db status. Maybe that's what it was. Okay, all right, so that's fine. So the MSF database actually works. So if I do workspaces, right? Isn't that what it was? Or workspace? It should have one, but I don't have anything. So I could technically do workspace A and then do TryHackMe, and it added it. Now I can do workspace, and now it says default. Now it actually shows the default. That's so annoying, because it previously didn't even say default, and I added TryHackMe, and it should technically say workspace TryHackMe is available, but it's not working. So what if I do this to actually change it, and let's do workspace one more time, and it still says default. So this is really annoying. This is actually not working the way that it should, because it's not showing me the workspace that I just added. And so let's do workspace default again, just to switch back to default. And then we'll just, for house cleaning, we'll delete the TryHackMe workspace that I just created. But it should have shown it, and it's kind of annoying that it didn't show it, but whatever. At least we practiced the commands real quick, and we saw that it worked. All right, so I'm going to click this, and we'll get a little sound effect, and then we'll move on to the next one. It shouldn't be a surprise that Metasploit has vulnerability scanners for us to leverage, and the low-hanging fruits is what we're looking for. And, we've already used this phrase a few times. So it's the easily identifiable and exploitable vulnerabilities that can potentially allow you to gain a foothold on a system and gain high-level privileges like root or admin. So finding these kinds of vulnerabilities using Metasploit will rely heavily on your ability to scan and fingerprint the target. Fingerprinting is just another way of saying enumeration. So the better you are at these stages, the more options Metasploit may provide you. For example, if you identify a VNC service running on the target, you may use the search function on Metasploit to list useful modules that have to do with the VNC service. And it will contain a payload and post modules. At this stage, these results are not very useful, as we've not discovered a potential exploit to use. However, in the case of VNC, there are several scanner modules that we can use. So using auxiliary scanner VNC, and then these are the various options. No, it's not. So you can use this one, you can use this one, you can use that one. And essentially in this particular case, they're using this specific one by running this second command right here. That's kind of what it looks like right here. This seems like an odd output, because if you use the key phrase use, then it should switch your terminal into this specific module. It should include that module. but it doesn't seem to be the case right there. So you can use info command for any module to have a better understanding. We've already discussed that in the Metasploit basics video. So just run info, it'll show you what it is and the license, the ranking of it, who actually created it, if it supports checks, what the basic options are, and what needs to be set. Usually it'll also show you the ones that are mandatory. Then there's a description, references, etc. So you get a lot of good information. So the VNC login modules can help us find login details for the VNC service, as we just saw over here, right? It'll test the VNC server on a range of machines and reports successful logins. Currently, it supports RFB protocol version 3.3, etc., etc. So that's what it's for. So who wrote the module that allows us to check SMTP servers for open relay? So we need to go and find modules for SMTP, and I bet there are going to be a lot of modules if we search for SMTP. But let's see, search SMTP, and there are 82 options. So we're looking for the relay. So there we go, SMTP relay. I think this might be the one right here, because the rest of them don't actually say relay in there. And I believe we are specifically looking for the one with the relay. Yeah, okay, so I'm definitely going to look for that one first. So we're going to do use number 39, because that's the SMTP relay. And then we'll just do info on it. And let's see who created it. Provided by Campbell Murray. So we'll just highlight this and copy that. Let's see if that's the answer that we're looking for here. I think it is. So let's see, Campbell Murray. Boom and boom. Nice. Cool. So let's actually move to exploitation. All right, we got a new virtual machine, so I already started it, and it's an exploitation framework. As we've already established, that's what Metasploit is really good for. That's where it really shines. Exploits are the most populated module category. So if we actually look into the version details of Metasploit, you can see that there's over 2,000 exploits, at least for this version, right? So we can literally look into what the version that we're running and how many it has, and I bet you it has more than 2048, because every single time that it updates, it just includes more exploits in there. So we can search and then obtain more information about the exploit using info, and then launch it using exploits. So all these things we've already talked about. A successful outcome depends on a thorough understanding of the services that are running on the target system, which means reconnaissance is very important. Intel gathering is very important. This is something that I've said very many times during the Junior PenTester and during the CompTIA Pentest Plus training series. It's just very, very important to do really good recon, because the quality of your reconnaissance, the quality of your intel that you've gathered, will determine how successful your exploitation is. And if you don't have good intel, you can run an exploit, you will fail, and you have to go back to the very beginning steps and start running intel again and trying to find exactly where you went wrong. So that's my biggest recommendation, is to don't rush through intel gathering. Don't rush through reconnaissance, because it will save you so much time and energy in trial and error if you just gather some really, really good information about your target. So most of the exploits that you'll find will have a preset default payload. You can always use the show payloads command to list all the other commands that you can use with that specific payload. So for example, the MS-17 Eternal Blue exploit, you can do show payloads and it'll list all of the payloads available. Once you decided on the one that you want to use, you can use set payload and then change it. So you can do set payload to, and it'll set it to this payload here, which is the generic reverse TCP shell, right? And so it says payload is now this, right? And then you run your options again, you do show options, and it'll actually show you the payload that it's actually activated as, and what the options would be for that payload that you would need to set. So choosing a working payload could become trial and error process due to environmental or OS restrictions that run, firewall rules, antivirus, file writing, or the program performing the payload execution isn't available. So maybe Python shell reverse TCP is not available, maybe because there's no Python or like an outdated version of Python. So some of the payloads will open new parameters that you may need to reset. So running the show options command once more can actually show them. And as you can see in the example before, right, the reverse payload will at least require you to set the lhost option. So you would need to set the lhost and then run exploit to actually make it work, right? So once a session is open, you can background it using Control-Z or abort it using Control-C. Backgrounding a session will be useful when working on more than one target simultaneously or on the same target, but you want to use a different exploit or a shell, which is what I've done previously in the exercises that we run, right? We established the connection, which is what is implied here. We actually had a connection, a reverse shell was done. So once we have this, we want to background this session so that we can do maybe some kind of a post-exploitation, right? To elevate our privileges, to escalate our privileges. So you could do Control-Z and it says backgrounding the session. Yes, we want to background it. And then you can actually run the sessions command and it'll show you the list of all of your active sessions, and you can reactivate them by doing sessions, the keyword sessions, and then giving it the ID number of the session that you want to reactivate, and then it'll just activate that. And I kind of just jumped ahead here. So you can do sessions and do the -H just to give you a help menu. We will actually show you all of the different options for sessions, and then you can do sessions -I and then followed by the session ID. So my bad, you actually do need to include the -I to initiate the specific session that you want to activate, right? So you do sessions -I and then give it the number of the ID for the session. So in this case, it's just 1. So sessions I1, and then it'll interact with session 1. And that's basically it. So fairly simple. So we're going to exploit one of the critical vulnerabilities on the target virtual machine. What is the content of the flag txt file, and what is the NTLM hash of the password for the user pirate? So it's a nice, good amount of exercises that we can actually do for this specific task. It's nice. I like this one. So let's see what the hints are that would help us with this. So the first hint says the target is missing the MS-17 patch. So that's something that we could have done with kind of doing a vulnerability scan using Nmap even, because Nmap has a good vulnerability scanner. The next one is you can use Meterpreter's search command. So once we've established our Meterpreter session, we can do that and run search to try to find this. And then the NTLM hash for the user pirate using hash dump. And all of those things are pretty straightforward. So the first thing that we want is to first and foremost copy our new IP address for the target machine. Then we can come here and let's see where we are currently. So let's clear the screen. We can go back here and then we can do search MS-17. And okay, I'll do search eternal blue. That might be a little bit easier. And there's still a bunch of things that show up for eternal blue, but we're looking for this one right here, that very first exploit. So it's going to be use 0. And now it's switched to that. So we can do show options and we can see that this is what we got. So the local host is us, our listening host, right? That's my specific attack box listening on this port. I do need to set the remote host because it's required, and all of these other things have already been preset for me. I don't need to do anything else. So I will do the set our hosts, and I will paste the IP address that I just copied. There we go. So that's my R hosts, and that's pretty much it. That's all I need to do to actually make this specific thing run. I can also do show payloads just to see what kind of payload is going to be activated, or actually it's the list of the payloads is what's going to show me. So I would do show options to see which one is actually active. So it says the payload options is the Meterpreter reverse TCP. That's the payload that we're actually going to be using. And all of the requirements for it have already been set. So we can now just run exploit and just watch this thing work. And usually it's pretty good on the first attempt. Sometimes you might need to rerun it a couple of times to establish your Meterpreter shell. So we will see if I am lucky. And I am. Look at that. It worked the very first time. So we can do search flag.txt, and you must specify a path for it to actually work. So we can do search, what is it? It says you must specify a valid file glob to search for. So -F. So search-f, and then we can search for the flag.txt. There you go, because I do need to give it the file that I'm searching for, right? So let's see how long that takes to find. Okay, cool. So there it is. It is inside of the user John's documents. So we can, I think we could actually even just do this. We can do cat or maybe type, because it would be a Windows machine that we've connected to. So you can do type and it'll type out the contents of a file. So documents and then flag.txt. And what is it? Unknown command type. Okay, so maybe not. So let's do C by concatenate. Let's try to do concatenate and see if that works. And if it doesn't, we might just need to download the file, which is perfectly fine. So operation failed. The system cannot find the file specified. Why? Did I mistype it? Cat users John documents flag. It's literally right there, unless I mistyped it. Did I mistype it? That's so weird. It doesn't look like I mistyped it. Documents flag txt. It looks like I mean, so maybe I'm just gonna do this just to make our life easier. We'll do this, and then let's do cat and then paste the path. And if it still says it doesn't work, then operation failed. System cannot find the file specified. Okay, that's weird. So let's now do a get command, and let's just get that. Did you mean get WD? I think so, right? Oh my gosh, how is this so difficult? There's the flag, it's right there. So why doesn't it work? So we're here. Maybe I'm gonna change my path. I'm gonna go to the C location and cd c underscore, we'll do users. cdc users. Operation failed. The system cannot find the file specified. This is so weird. Okay, let me see what's going on here. Okay, so I could do a change directory using the 2 dots, and it actually did work, and it switched me to the location of the root folder, which is nice. So now I should be able to see the list. Okay, very good. So now I should go to users, right? Can I go into users? Great. Okay, so we're now here. So now we can go into John's folder, and we can go into the documents folder, and there is the flag. So now will you show me the flag? There it is. Okay, that's interesting that it didn't work with the specific path, so we had to kind of like maneuver around to find it, but whatever, it worked. And there we go. There's that ding, ding, ding. So cool. All right. So what is the NTLM hash of the password of the user pirate? And we were told that we could actually do hash dump. So let's go here. We'll go into the root. Okay, that worked as well. So you could actually combine these two together, or these path traversal tactic. You can do that to actually get into the root. So let's do hash dump. Let's see if that works. And that's it. That's all you had to do. Just type in hash dump, and it did work. And so there's the hash pirate, right? So their NTLM hash, I want to say it's this portion right here, this first portion. So let's try that. Oh, there's an incorrect answer sound as well. That's cool. I mean, they're definitely gamifying the platform, which is kind of cool. I actually really like it. There we go. So it's actually not the first portion, it is the second portion. It's after this this colon right there, and before the ending colons at the end. That's the one that you're looking for. Very cool. Very, very cool. So now we can move on to Msfvenom, and this is actually a new virtual machine over there as well. So let me terminate this one, and I will start the new one, and then we will do the Msfvenom exercise. All right, for this specific section, we're going to be using Msfvenom, which replaced MSF payload and MSF encode, and it allows us to generate payloads. And you can access all the payloads available in Metasploit by just running Msfvenom. And you can create payloads in different formats like PHP, EXE, DLL, ELF, etc. And you can do it for a variety of different target systems, for example, Apple, Windows, Android, Linux, and other things. So You can always run the Msfvenom L payloads to list all of the payloads, and this is what you can see right here. And it is a very long list of payloads. You can look at the output formats, so standalone payloads, for example, Windows executable for Meterpreter, or a usable raw format like Python, and it could be listing of the formats that'll help you figure out what it is. You can also do the same thing with encoders. So they don't aim to bypass antivirus installed on the target system. It's just to encode the payload and be effective against antivirus, maybe, but when you use it, you use it as obfuscation techniques or learning methods to inject shellcode is a better solution to the problem for actually avoiding antivirus. The example that we're using in this case is to encode it with the E parameter, and the PHP version of Meterpreter was encoded in base 64 and the output format was raw. So this can actually be, again, I kind of read through that and jumbled a lot of thoughts together, but you can actually turn the payload into what we can see right here, which is the encoding of PHP base 64 at the very end. And it can technically help you avoid detection by antivirus, because antivirus may have flagged this specific reverse TCP payload, the signature of that. It may have flagged it, and it only recognizes the signature of that payload in its raw format. So if you change it to base 64 encoding, you may be able to actually avoid detection by the antivirus. You may, right? We're not saying that you definitely will, but you may. Another thing that is useful is the use of handlers. So similar to exploits using a reverse shell, you'll be able to accept incoming connections but generated by the MSF payload. And when using an exploit module, this part is automatically handled by the exploit module. You will remember how the payload options title that we actually looked at appeared when we were setting a reverse shell. The term commonly used to receive a connection from a target is catching a shell. A reverse shell or Meterpreter callbacks generated in Msfvenom payload can easily be caught using a handler. And this may be familiar, right? So what we're going to be looking at. So we'll exploit the file upload vulnerability that is in DVWA, Damn Vulnerable Web Application. For the exercises in this task, we'll be able to replicate a similar scenario on another system, and it was used for illustration in this particular section. So you first generate the PHP shell using Msfvenom, then you start the Metasploit handler, and then you execute the PHP shell. And the Msfvenom will require a payload, the local machine IP address, and the local port to which the payload will connect. So 10.02.19 in this example is the IP address of the attack box that we used in the attack, and the local port 7777 was chosen. So I'm going to zoom out just so I can kind of show you what this looks like right here. So you can see Msfvenom, right? That's the first portion of it. Then you have -P to choose the payload that you want to create, which is PHP reverse PHP. Then you give it the listening host, which is the attack box's IP, then the listening port, and then you give it the format. So in this case, we want a raw format. And then this little arrow points to the name of the output file that we want to create, which is the reverse_shell.php. So that command, you press enter and it actually starts working. And if you see this at the end right here, that means that your payload was actually generated and it worked. So the output PHP file will miss the starting PHP tag commented. And so you can go ahead and see this piece right here. So this is what they're looking at. And when you see this portion right here, this means that it's been commented, so it's not active. So it'll miss the starting PHP tag commented and the end tag as seen below right here. So the reverse shell should be edited and converted into working by removing that comment portion. So this /* and then these two, this / right here, those need to be removed so you can, it actually looks like this. And then when you see that, it means that it's actually going to be a working file at that point, because it's not taken or it's not activated by default. So we need to actually activate it by removing the comments so that it can actually read as a regular PHP file. And then so this is what it should look like at the very end of the file. The comments should be removed from that as well. And then this is what it should look like at the very beginning of the file. And usually when you're looking at it with some kind of a text editor, which is like Nano in this case. So when we use the Nano text editor, if it's been uncommented, meaning if it's active, you'll actually see all of this color coding done accordingly. If it's been commented, you will most likely see everything in the same exact color. So you just want to keep that piece in mind. If you see different color coding, it usually means that it actually has worked. So we'll be using the multi-handler to receive the incoming connection, and it can be used with the use exploit multi-handler command. Multi-handler supports all the Metasploit payloads and can be used for Meterpreter as well as regular shells because it is a multi-handler. So to use the module, we'll need to set the payload value PHP reverse PHP in this case, and the lhost and lport values. So we're going to be using multi-handler, and then we're going to set the payload to PHP reverse PHP, and then set the lhost, lport, and then finally when you run show options, it'll show everything being set for you. Payload option, reverse PHP, the lhost, lport have been set, etc. And once it's all set, you can do run, and then it should work. So when the reverse shell is triggered, the connection will be received by multi-handler and provide us with a shell. If it was set as Meterpreter, then multi-handler will provide us with a Meterpreter shell. There are other payloads as well based on the target configuration, install web server, installed interpreter, etc. So Msfvenom can be used to create payloads in almost all formats, and these are just a few examples. So Linux executable and linkable format, also known as ELF. So this is one command right here that will generate a payload for the Meterpreter reverse TCP for this host and port, and then give it the format ELF, and then this is going to be the name of the output file. It's comparable to the .exe format, and these are executable files for Linux. So ELF is specific to Linux, and exe is specific to Windows. You may still need to make sure that they have executable permissions on the target machine. So for example, once you have the shell ELF file on your target machine, use the chmod command to give it an executable permission so that you can actually run it. And once done, you can run it by just doing this, very similar to running any other kind of executable on a Linux machine. If you wanted to create it for Windows, this is very similar to what you did previously, except now you're doing a format of exe. If you wanted to create it for PHP, you would do a format of raw. If you wanted to do it for ASP, you would do format ASP. If you wanted to do Python, you would do format raw. And then you would be using, in this case, a reverse Python shell. So you would still do raw format. It's just that the selection here has now turned into the reverse Python. So all of them are reverse payloads, and this means that you'll need to have the exploit multi-handler module listening on the attacking machine to work as a handler. You'll need to set up the handler accordingly with the payload, lhost, and lport parameters, and these will be the same that you have used when creating the Msfvenom payload. So for example, if you're doing a payload of cmd Unix reverse Python for Msfvenom, right, once you activate the multi-handler, you will need to change the payload of the multi-handler to cmd Unix reverse Python. If you are using Msfvenom to create Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP, you would then, inside a multi-handler, change the payload to read Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP, so on and so forth. So that's how it would be done. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to launch the machine, which is what you can see on the right-hand side right here. And the username is Murphy, the password is 1Q, etc. You can connect via SSH or launch this machine in the browser. Once the terminal type, do sudo su to get a root shell, and this will make things easier. So let's do that first portion. So first we're just going to do an SSH, and we're going to connect to this guy, which is Murphy. So let me just come over here. I'll do back, or I think that's exit, because the Meterpreter session should have been closed to my connection right there. So there we go. And now I can do back. So this window that I have right here is going to be for my Msfconsole. I will do my SSH to Murphy at the target of my IP address. What's my IP address target here? So first I gotta do this and then press enter. Yes, I do want to remember that. And now I want to go get his password. And there is the password. Then we can go and paste that password, press enter, And there we go. So we are officially logged in as this Murphy user. So let's see, who am I? I am Murphy, and uname is Linux. Excellent. Working directory is root. So let's do sudo su, and let's submit the password for Murphy again. There we go. And we are now root. So who am I again? I am the root user. Great. Okay, cool. So clear will actually work. So we are now the root user inside of the target machine's shell. Great. First step has been done. Now create a Meterpreter payload in the ELF format on the attack box or the attacking machine of your choice. And so what do I want? I want the Meterpreter payload in ELF format. So we want the Meterpreter payload in ELF format, which would be this thing, Linux x86 Meterpreter reverse TCP. I want to say that that's the one that I want to use. So I'm going to open this up in my second monitor just so I can type this out, because even though I can technically copy paste it, what I need to do is I need to actually, oh my God, when it opens up in a new window, it'll shrink my view here. So let's get back into full screen mode. Perfect. Great. Okay, so we want to use that Meterpreter command that we saw earlier to generate that payload. So I'm going to type that out manually, and it is the ELF format again. Just sorry, I know I'm kind of reading this and it's making it redundant, but I just want to make sure that I only have to do this once. So Meterpreter in ELF format on, okay, very good. So that's what we're going to be doing. So that's the command that I'm going to be running in this case. So let's go here. And technically, I guess I don't need, I'm going to have multiple windows open here. So one of them is for the Msfconsole itself, which is this piece right here. The other one is going to be the secure shell connection to the target. And then this one is going to be the window that I'm going to end up using to create my Msfvenom payload. So it'll be Msfvenom. So let's make sure we type it right. And then we're going to do the Linux x86 and then Meterpreter reverse TCP. And then the L host will end up being my attack box IP, which is right up here. So 10.201.120.126. That's the L host. The L port, I'll just do, 7777 just to keep it uniform here. And then the format is going to be ELF. And then the name of the file will just do reverse shell.elf just to make it like that. So this is what the full command will look like once we're using Msfvenom. Press enter here. And so it takes a few seconds. It's not instantaneous, but it's fairly quick, and it's going to be using Msfvenom to create it. There we go. So there we go. So now if I actually run ls, I should see it right here. There we go, reverse shell.elf. Now I can do this either in my current location or I can do it on the target machine. So first, let's make sure that we can actually finish this. So there we go. We got that Meterpreter shell. Transfer it to the target machine. You can use a Python web server on your attack box, and then wget, which technically could just work as well. If I do the Python web server, so let's do it from here. We'll do Python. What is the command? I forget. So Python 3. There we go. Okay, so Python 3 -m http.server. And we want to do on, I guess, the port 9000 is what they use. So we'll just use that. So we are now serving it from the current location that I'm at, right? And I should be able to access that. So now I can just do a basic wget by using the attack box itself and then pulling the shell to download it to the target machine. Now, usually when we do this, it actually asks for the password of the person, or maybe not. I think wget should work without me having to get the password, but we'll try it. So let's do the http:// and then we want to give it the IP address of the attack box, right? So for me, it's literally right up here, but you would be giving it the IP address of your local machine, not the target machine, right? And then you're going to do : and the port, which is 9000, and then we're going to do / and the name of the file, which is reverse shell elf. So this is what it looks like right here, right? So it's on this specific IP, which is basically my local machine's IP :9000. That's where we're doing it, right? That's where it's serving from. And we already saw that inside of this location is where I have this reverse shell elf. So if I actually go into my target machine here, the secure shell connection that I have, that's what I want to do, the IP address of my attack box, and then on port 9000, and then reverse shell elf. And that's basically it. Press enter, and I'll download the file. There we go. So now I should actually have this here. So ls, there we go. And we can see that it's existing right here. But we do need to make sure that it's executable. So we will do chmod plus execution permission, and we want to give it the reverse shell elf file. And if I run it now, you can see that it's turned into a green little file here. So cool. So that's ready to go. Now we can go to here and we can do the multi-handler, right? So we're going to search for multi-handler, and obviously, as usual, there's going to be a bunch of different stuff, but the one that we are interested in, I think, is the exploit multi-handler, right? That's the one that we're supposed to be using. Let's just make sure. Yeah, exploit multi-handler. So we're going to use number 7 in this case. So it'll activate multi-handler for us. So we'll do show options. And we can see that, you know, the current payload is the generic shell reverse TCP. I do want to change it to the payload that we created here, which was the Linux, etc., reverse TCP, right? So let me do show payloads for this, and I wonder if it's going to be like a long ass list of things. I feel like it's going to be a very long list of things that's going to be available. So let's see what the list of payloads is going to look like. Yeah, that's 1,531 payloads. So I'm just going to venture a guess and say that we can just copy this thing, and that'll be the payload that we can set. So let's go here, and we will do set payloads, or payload, right? Set payload. I think that's the command here. So where is it? Set payload. Yeah. So set payload without an S at the end. And then we're going to paste the name of the payload. Do that. And now my payload is the Linux reverse TCP, etc. And so let's do show options here. And it says the L host and the L port are going to be the 4444 is what was pre-established, but what I did right here was I set my port, when I created this thing, I set the port to 7777. So I need to set the L port to 7777, and then I need to set the L host to the host IP, which is for my attack box. So the 10.201.120.126, that's going to be my L host, right? So that should be it. That should be the only things that I would have to do for this. And if we've done our job, if we've done everything correctly, if we do run, we will have the multi-handler listening. And once that's actually listening, we can just go ahead inside of this window, inside of this terminal, activate it. So exploit completed, but no session was created. So let's do several, or do I need to run the exploit first, right? No, it says run, start a reverse TCP handler. Okay, great. So it should actually be running and giving us a session. So once we actually have the session, then we can run the reverse shell payload from here, and we should be able to get that reverse shell connection. So let's see how many times I got to do this in order for my session to actually be created. Okay, so the problem seems to be that the port number says that it's already in use or unavailable. So I will go ahead and set the L host to 4444, and we will try it again on 4444. Oh, not L host. Ah, my goodness, that was stupid. The L port. So L port needs to be 4444. And then I need to set the L host one more time to the attack box. And there is that. Okay, great. So now, let's see. All right, cool. So let's run it. Let's see if it connects this time. I don't know why it says 77 is not available, because I'm not using it on anything else. I attached it to the payload that we created. Okay, there you go. Now it actually works. So reverse TCP handler on 4444 is actually working. But my reverse shell, the reverse shell that I created is on port 7777, so it's not going to work. That's the thing. That's what's annoying about this, is that it's not going to actually work. So I need to exit my Python or Control C, and I need to create a new Msfvenom and do it on port 4444, because it's not going to work if it's on 7777. That's the thing. So it needs to actually match up. The port itself needs to match up to the port of your multi-handler. So payload size final. Okay, great. And I should actually recreate it with a different name. So we will do reverse shell 1. And we'll do that one more time. I just want to, again, make sure that everything's all good. So just to kind of review with you what I did is I updated the port to read 4444, because that it has to match. Otherwise, our Meterpreter or multi-handler isn't going to be able to listen to it. And then from there, I changed the name to include 1 at the end of it, because I don't want it to give me an issue for, not having overwritten the file itself. And we should actually also be looking at the reverse shell file itself to see if it's been commented out. And, oh, okay. So reverse shell 1.elf. Oh, I can't even mess with that at all. So, okay, it hasn't been commented out, I guess, because it wasn't a PHP file. It's like a ELF file. So, all right, fine, no worries. So now we can go ahead and do the Python listener one more time. So the Python server, I should say, on port 9000. So there we go. Now it's serving on port 9000. And then we will go ahead and download the file. But now we just want to make sure that we add that 1 at the end of it. So very similar command to what we had previously. We just added that 1 at the end to actually be able to download it. And now we have reverse shell 1.elf. So now we want to change the permissions to execute for this one as well. And now we should have both of them being executable. Perfect. So, all right, great. So now I have a listener, a reverse TCP listener. That should be working. I now have a running exploit on the correct port. So fingers crossed, reverse shell 1.elf, pressing enter should give us the connection. And there we go. Meterpreter session opened and it worked like a charm. Beautiful. Just had to do a few modifications to get there. So, all right, so we did our server, we downloaded the file, got a Meterpreter session on the target machine. Now use a post-exploitation module to dump hashes of other users on the system. We could technically do hash dump, and it says use the post Linux gather hash dump module. I feel like I could also just run hash dump on this right here. So let's see if hash dump just by itself will work. If we just do that. And it doesn't. So it's privilege extension to be loaded. Run load privilege extension. So let's do load privilege. Failed to load extension. Privilege extension is not supported by this interpreter type. The privilege extension is okay, fine. So fine. We're gonna background our session. There we go. So we do sessions, and there is our backgrounded session. No worries. And we can now go to our exploit. So use the exploit, which was the one, what is it? Post Linux gather hash dump. So we're going to use the post Linux gather hash dump. And there it is. So there we go. So we're good so far. So we can clear the screen. And so when we look at the options for this, because it's a post command, it requires that we just activate a session, right? We need to set a session for it. So you can do set, and I believe there was a session ID was number 2. So set session is 2, options, there we go. So now we can just do run, and there we go. Now we got the hash values, and who are we looking for here? The other user's password hash. So Murphy is the one that we have. The other user would be Claire, And Claire's password hash is this whole shebang right here. So we're just going to copy that whole thing, which is massive. And there it is, baby. And we'll just click complete on that one too. Wonderful. There we go. That was it. Not bad, huh? Pretty cool little exercise that we did, and hopefully you were able to follow along. But just to kind of give you an idea of what I did, right? So I have 3 different terminals that are open here to actually execute this, and let's actually do this in the review and the summary. Let's do that. We'll have an actual dedicated session to review and summary. So in summary, let me actually just review everything that I did, and let me make sure that I have these things open so you can see it. Okay, so the first thing, so this specific session, this terminal right here, is the terminal that we were using just Msfconsole in. So I got into Msfconsole, then we went into 2 different things that we had. So the multi-handler was one of the modules that we had, and that is still actually running inside of sessions for us. So ID number 2 right here, and for ID number 2, we have a Meterpreter session that was using the multi-handler. So if I actually go to sessions I2, it should just reactivate that, and it's going to put me back inside of my Meterpreter session for the Linux, right? So that's basically what that was, right? Inside of this specific terminal, we used the multi-handler exploit or module, and then once we established our multi-handler connection, once that was established, we went ahead and backgrounded it by doing Control-Z. So I can just do that again, Control-Z, session 2, there we go. And now I can actually look at my sessions and I can see that it's there. And then once you background it, you can see that the terminal has now turned back to the MSF6, right? So now I'm just inside of the normal Metasploit framework. So from here, I needed to go ahead and find that post-exploitation, which they gave us the name for, which was the post-exploit Linux, etc., whatever that name was that we used at the very, very end right there. Post-Linux gather hash dump, right? That was the post-exploitation module that we used to refer back to this session. So that all of that was going on inside of this. Now inside of this specific terminal, this is the only one, we did 2 things inside of this terminal. The first one was to create the payload using Msfvenom. Now there was like this weird thing happened that when I was trying to connect using the multi-handler to the open port, which was 7777, it said that it wouldn't do it, so I had to use a different port, and I had to come and recreate my payload to connect to that port specifically, that 4444. Otherwise, the payload won't work. You won't be able to get that connection between this window, or excuse me, the multi-handler window. You wouldn't be able to get that connection between this terminal and this terminal, which is the secure shell connection that we had to the target machine. So it was like a handful of things that we did, right? So we created the payload using Msfvenom. We have to make sure that it actually is connecting to the attack box IP or the IP of your machine that you're using on the designated port that you've assigned to it. And then from there, you go ahead and make sure that you actually have the multi-handler session up and running, and you've modified the multi-handler session to connect to that port number, right? So this specific port number that we have over here, and this is the port number that is on the payload. So when you actually run the payload itself on your target machine, it connects to that port number on the multi-handler. Hopefully that made sense. And if you've done all of those things, then you should be able to get that reverse shell connection, that Meterpreter shell connection, and which we were able to do. And then we were able to then use the post-exploitation module to do hash dump and gather the hash value of Claire, I think, which was the other user. And that's pretty much it. And we are officially wrapped on this particular video. If you got value out of this video, and if you would like to get more videos like this one, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, especially as we continue with Jr.PenTester and we finish and wrap up Jr.PenTester. And of course, there is the CompTIA Pentest Plus pathway that is also about to be wrapped up in the next week or two, something like that, because we're towards the end of that as well. And then there's a bunch of other playlists that are available here. There are the posts that I release on our community tab, on the post tab right here. This is the CompTIA playlists that are currently working. We have the members only videos that are available for Hackaholics Anonymous. We have the stuff that would be recommended to you. So for you specifically, this section is going to change. And then these are the most popular videos, the creative playlist that I got. And then of course we have the SOC level 1, SOC level 2, and security engineering. And honestly, you could literally just click on this little button right here and search for anything, and you'll be able to find anything that you might be interested in. So Linux or Python or Metasploit or Burp Suite or whatever it is, right? So there's a bunch of stuff that's available here. There are currently 413 videos at the time of this recording, but I bet you there will be very many more by the time that you actually watch this video. So there's a lot of stuff that's rolling out on this channel constantly all the time. And if you have any specific requests for content, drop it in the comment section below. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, the stuff that we reviewed today, drop it in the comment section below. And just reach out, right? I'm very responsive to the comment section. And if you just want to say hi, or if you actually have any questions, I will go ahead and reply to you almost immediately. If you want to troll me and if you want to drop like negative comments and things like that, you will not hear from you. But if you just want to say something constructive, or if you have any questions, I promise you, I will respond to you. And that's pretty much it. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. And that's it, right? So quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous and we'll wrap it up. If you're serious about your SysAdmin education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next video later. In this episode of the Jr.PenTester pathway, we are going to finish up our Metasploit module by reviewing the Metasploit Meterpreter. And it's going to be a really good one, and I'm excited to share it with you. Compared to the last video that we did, this should be a relatively simple and straightforward video. We're going to be talking about the Meterpreter specific element of the Metasploit framework and how in-memory payloads can be used for post-exploitation. As always, there's going to be an introduction, then we're going to go through the various flavors of Meterpreter and the Meterpreter commands themselves, post-exploitation with Meterpreter, and there's going to be a post-exploitation challenge that we're going to have to run. This is a subscriber-only room that's available inside of TryHackMe, but you can technically just download Kali Linux for free from the Kali Linux website, and then go ahead and make sure that you have installed the Metasploit framework on there. Usually Kali Linux actually comes pre-installed with Metasploit, so you should be ready to go as long as you have access to some kind of a Kali Linux machine. Now you can actually download and install Metasploit on other types of operating systems as well, so it doesn't have to be Kali Linux. It's just that when you download Kali Linux, you actually get all of these tools installed on it, and one of those tools happens to be Metasploit. If you don't know how to do it, you can actually install Kali Linux on a little thumb drive, and there's a playlist that I have on this channel, CompTIA Linux Plus. And in the very first video, in chapter 3 of that video, there's a section where we just go through the installation of Kali Linux. So, and there's instructions over there that you can just install Kali Linux on a little thumb drive, and you will have Kali Linux on a USB drive ready to go wherever you are, wherever you want to take it with you, and you can do a bunch of cool things with it. So that is my notes on how you can get access to Metasploit and do the things that we're going to be doing in this particular video. This video was provided to us by the TryHackMe platform. Love these guys. I have learned a lot from them, and I totally think that it's worth the money, the 12 bucks or 14 bucks, whatever it is, to actually pay for it. So I'm a really, really big fan, but I guess technically I am kind of biased. I get nothing from it, by the way, just so you know. I just think that they're really awesome. And in this particular video, Replastic, I think, or Replastic, probably Replastic or Replastic. I don't know how you pronounce that, but that's the creator of this specific room that we're going to be going through. So big shout out to that particular person. Timestamps for all of these things are going to be in the description section below. And that about does it for our overview. So quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous, and we will jump into it. If you're serious about your SysAdmin education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into Metasploit Meterpreter. All right, in the last couple of videos on Metasploit, we actually did use the Meterpreter, but it is worthy enough to get its own video. And it's a Metasploit payload that supports the pen testing process with many valuable components. It'll run on the target system and act as an agent within a command and control architecture, and you'll interact with the target operating system and files and use the Meterpreter specialized commands. It has many versions which will provide different functionalities based on the target. And the way that it works is that it runs on the target system, but it's not installed on it. So it runs in memory, meaning in the RAM, in the volatile memory. And it doesn't write itself to the disk on the target. This aims to avoid being detected during antivirus scans. By default, most antivirus software will scan new files on the disk. So when you download a file from the internet, for example, and since Meterpreter runs in memory, being the random access memory, the RAM, it can actually potentially avoid having a file that has to be written onto the disk, and therefore it may be seen as a process and not have a file on the target system. And it aims to avoid being detected by network-based intrusion prevention systems and intrusion detection systems by using encrypted communication within the server where Metasploit runs, typically being your actual attack box. So that's where it is connecting to, right? So you need to have a target that you establish that Meterpreter session with, and that target needs to be connected to something, which ends up being your attacking machine. So if the target organization does not decrypt and inspect encrypted traffic coming to and going out of the local network, the IPS and IDS will not be able to detect the activities. So it's recognized by major antivirus software. This feature provides some degree of stealth, even if it's actually recognized, right? So it's more stealthy than downloading a file onto your target machine and then running it as a payload. That's basically the idea here. It's not the most stealthy because the new generations, the next generation firewalls or intrusion prevention, intrusion detection systems, they can potentially detect it. It's just that Meterpreter is more stealthy simply because of the fact that the communication is encrypted, and if they don't decrypt the communication, then you are fairly good to go, and there's no file being downloaded on the target. Therefore, you avoid that layer of scrutiny by the defensive appliances that they have, right? So the example that we're going to look at over here, it shows the target Windows machine exploited by MS-17 vulnerability, and Meterpreter is running with the process ID of 1304, and it will be different every single time that you run it. It just gets a new process ID. And we have used the get PID command, which returns the process IDs, and the process ID is used by operating system to identify running processes, if you did not know. And all the processes running in Linux or Windows will have a unique ID, and it's used to interact with the process when we need it to. So get PID for the Meterpreter session itself is 1304. Now we actually, if we look at the list of processes, so we run the PS command and we look at the list of the processes and we looked at 1304 PID, it's actually spool SV executable. It does not say Meterpreter, right? The executable file itself is spool exe or spool Msfvenom. So even if we were to go to look at the dynamic link libraries that are used by Meterpreter in the 1304 PID, we would not find anything jumping at us because, again, so looking at the task list with the PID 1304, we can see spool Msfvenom. It doesn't use anything that is like out of the ordinary or anything that automatically jumps out at you as being malicious. All of these things are technically just normal processes that would be running in the background. Therefore, they don't jump out as anything malicious. However, obviously, we can use all of these things maliciously. We could use them with bad intentions. It just happens to be that by themselves, they don't trigger anything in the alerts. So techniques and tools that can be used to detect Meterpreter are beyond the scope of this specific video. We're just trying to figure out how stealthy Meterpreter is, and the most antivirus softwares will detect it, just as a rule of thumb. Just keep that in mind. It's not meant to be undetectable by everything, right? Just, again, keep that in mind. We're just trying to show you that it's more stealthy than if you were to download an actual payload on your target and run that payload, because antivirus for sure will detect it. It's also worth noting that it will establish an encrypted TLS communication within the attacker system. So if that communication is not decrypted, that also helps with avoiding detection and keeping your activities a little bit more secure. So that is the overview of this. So let's now talk about the various flavors of Meterpreter. In the very first video that we did on Metasploit, we talked about the difference between inline, also known as single, and staged payloads that are available. And Metasploit payloads can mostly just be divided into those two categories. And so this is the specific link to that room, but again, it's not the video before this one, but the video right before that one. That will be the one that is the introduction to it, and then we actually talked about these various types of payloads in there. And then there's the Metasploit exploitation video, which is the video right before this one that we also went through, and we looked at the various different elements of using Metasploit, including Meterpreter and using Msfvenom to actually create payloads that will establish that connection for us. It's just that the actual outlines of these types of payloads, the inline and stage payloads, was covered inside the intro to Metasploit, and then the actual use of them was covered inside the Metasploit exploitation. So stage payloads are sent to the target in two steps. The initial part is the stager, and it's installed, and it requests the rest of the payload. And this allows for a smaller initial payload size. The inline payloads are sent in a single step. And Meterpreter payloads are also divided into staged or stagged, I guess, but it's supposed to say staged, and inline versions. So there's two different versions that work for Meterpreter, and it has a wide range of different versions that you can choose from based on the target system. So you can actually have a Linux version, you could have a Unix version, a Windows version, etc. So the easiest ways to have an idea about this could be to actually just list them using Msfvenom. So you could do Msfvenom -- list and then payloads, and then you can grep for the Meterpreter keyword by just feeding the output of this command into grep. Fairly simple stuff here. So this is what you can see right there, right? So that's what the command is. And now it's listing all of the different Meterpreter versions for you. So there's Android, Apple iOS, Java, Linux, and many more. So we have OS X, PHP, Python, Windows, right? The decision on which version to use will be based on three factors. The target operating system, so is it Linux or Windows? Is it Mac? Is it Android or iPhone, right? The components available on the target system, so is Python actually installed on the target? Is there a PHP website that you're trying to connect to, right? So it could be very, very different. Network connection types that you have with the target system, so do they allow raw TCP connections? Can you only have an HTTPS reverse connection? Are IPv6 addresses not as closely monitored as IPv4 addresses? There are a lot of different questions, that will determine what you actually use as your Meterpreter payload. If you're not using Meterpreter as a standalone payload generated by Msfvenom, your choice may also be limited by the exploit. You will notice some exploits will have a default Meterpreter payload. For example, the Eternal Blue exploit. It'll actually have its own default payload. So using this and then listing the actual payload itself it says the configured payload is Windows x64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. That's the basic default exploit that's actually been configured for that Eternal Blue exploit, or the default payload that's been configured for the Eternal Blue exploit, I should say. You can also list all the available payloads by doing show payload. So once you're actually inside of the exploit itself, you can do show payloads and it'll list a bunch of payloads. Just so you know, this is a very, very short list, just letting you know there are very many payloads that are available when you run the show payloads option, usually in the hundreds, if not thousands. So that is that. So now we can actually talk about the commands that are available through Meterpreter. All right, just like very many other things, if you type help on any Meterpreter session, it will actually list all of the commands for you. So when you're inside of the Meterpreter session, you can see that your command line will actually change. And then when you type help, then it'll actually give you all of the options available for that session. So for example, you can do background and it'll background your current session. This can be done also with Control Z. So you can do background or Control Z and it'll background your current session. The alias for the background could be listed. You could kill it. You could list all the running background scripts. You could do BG run to actually execute a Meterpreter script, etc., etc. Every version of Meterpreter will have different command options. So running the help command is actually a good idea. Commands are built-in tools available on Meterpreter, and they'll run on the target system without loading any additional scripts or executables because they come native to Meterpreter. So you have three primary categories of tools. You have the built-in commands, you have Meterpreter tools, and then you have Meterpreter scripting. The built-in commands are specific to the actual operating system you're connected with. When you run help, you'll see Meterpreter commands are listed under different categories. So core commands, file system commands, networking commands, system, user interface, webcam, audio output, elevate, password database, timestamp, etc. So the list above was taken from the output of help on the version of Windows x64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. They will be different when you use other Meterpreter versions. Just keep that in mind. The Meterpreter commands themselves are very helpful to navigate and interact with the target system. So these are the most commonly used, and again, you can check all of them by running the help command once you've started your session. So background's the current session. Exit terminates the Meterpreter session. GUID gets the session GUID for your session. The help menu, the info menu, the herb, which is the interactive Ruby shell. Loads one or more Meterpreter sessions. Migrate allows you to migrate Meterpreter to another process. Run executes Meterpreter scripts or post modules and sessions will quickly switch to another session. So these are the basic core commands of Meterpreter. Then you have the file system commands. Now, this I really, really love because it actually is congruent with Linux file system. So you could actually be connected to a Windows machine, but you would run these, which are they're the Linux syntax essentially. So ls is dir, so dir is the Windows version, ls is the Linux Unix version. cd is the same both on Windows and Linux Unix. pwd is the Linux version of printing the current working directory. Edit, cat, rm, search, upload, download, all these things are to interact with the file system. So, change a directory, go back and forth, list the contents, list where you, or, declare where you actually are inside of the file system, etc., etc., etc. Then there are the networking commands, so arp, ifconfig, netstat, port forward, route. ifconfig is the Linux Unix version. ipconfig would be the Windows version, right? So these again are similar to the stuff that you would see inside of a Linux Unix environment. System commands: clear EV, clears the event logs; execute, get PID, get UID; kill, pkill, PS; reboot, shell, shutdown, sysinfo. All of these things. These are just system commands, right? So I'm not reading the details of all of these things for you because that's like beyond the scope of this. You can pause the screen if you want to read through this list, or you can always just type help when you're inside of the Meterpreter session, and then you'll get all of these categories of commands that are available to you. And then these are just some of the other commands that are listed under different category menus in the help menu: idle time, key scan dump, key scan start, stop, screen share. So This is actually very handy because this is actually capturing and stopping the capture of keystrokes, as well as dumping all of those contents. Screen share, screenshot, record mic, webcam chat, list, snap stream, get system, hash dump, which is very handy, dumps the contents of the SAM database so you can potentially get the hash values of the various users' passwords, etc. A lot of really good stuff. Again, just type help and then you'll be able to see everything that is available for the specific Meterpreter that you are running and what might be available on that target system that you are connected to. So let's move on to post-exploitation with Meterpreter. A lot of these commands we already have reviewed, but it's worth it to go over them again because we're going to be actually running the post-exploitation exercise in the next section. So help, again, will just give you a list of all the available commands in the Meterpreter. It has many versions, so each version may have different options available. And when you type help, you will see what quickly is available to you as far as commands themselves are concerned. Get UID will display the user with which Meterpreter is currently running, and it'll give you an idea of the possible privilege levels on the target system. For example, are you an admin like NT authority system or just a regular user? So in this case, it is NT authority system, so they're an admin. The PS command will list the running processes. It'll give you the PID information that you'll need to migrate Meterpreter to another process should you choose to do that. So PS, very similar to anything else that you would run, it'll just give you the list of the various processes. Now, when you have that list, right, you can actually migrate your session into another process so that you can interact with that process. For example, if you see a word processor running word.exe, notepad.exe, you can migrate to it and start capturing keystrokes sent by the user to that process. Some Meterpreter versions will offer you the key scan, start, stop, and dump command options to make Meterpreter act like a keylogger. Migrating to another process may also help you have a more stable Meterpreter session. To migrate to any process, you need to type the migrate command followed by the PID of the desired target process. And so this is process switching to 716. So migrate switches to 716. And that's it. It still reads Meterpreter for you, but you have now switched from 1304 to the 716 PID. You may lose your user privileges if you migrate from a high privileged user to a process that started by a low privileged user. So just keep that in mind, and you might not be able to gain them back unless you do the entire exploit again and you establish your session as Meterpreter as the system user. So you would need to go back to the very beginning and try that again. So keep that piece in mind. Hash dump will list the contents of the SAM database, which is the security account manager, and it stores passwords on Windows systems, and they're basically the hashes. So they're stored in NTLM format. So admin, guest, and John, we can see that these are the hashes for them. And it's actually after this next colon right here. After this last colon is where the hashes start. So it's between this colon and this final series of 3 colons at the end. This would be the password hash. So that is just some info that might be useful to you. It's not mathematically possible to crack these things, but NTLM databases are actually very, very common. CrackStation is a really, really big one. And you can potentially use a rainbow table that stores, millions of various hash values to see potentially maybe it has the plaintext version of that hash value. If you don't find the plaintext version, you can actually use the hash in a pass the hash attack to authenticate on other systems that these users can access the same network. So you can potentially find the plaintext value using a rainbow table, or you could just use a pass the hash attack. The search command is useful to locate files with potentially juicy information in a capture the flag context. You can find a flag text file, which is usually what this looks like. So you can just search for a file and then give it the name of the file name. You can do flag with an asterisk at the end to pull up anything that has the word flag in it, for example, and then you can look through the contents of that to actually capture the flag. The shell command will launch a regular command line shell on the system. Pressing Control-Z will help you go back to the Meterpreter shell. So you can do Meterpreter, you're inside the Meterpreter, do shell, and it'll convert you to the Windows shell that you see right here. And then from there, you can do Control Z, and it'll come out of this and then go back into the Meterpreter session that you have over there. So that is pretty much it. And we are now good to go to the Post-Exploitation challenge. For this specific challenge, we need to start our virtual machine. This is going to be the target machine. I've already launched it. We also need to use the attack box, and I've already launched that as well. You can technically just use your own computer, your own Linux or Unix or Windows. You would need to connect to the TryHackMe server via OpenVPN. I always just use the attack box because it's much more convenient for me, and it's faster, and sometimes the attack box is configured in advance for us to make these things easier to run, these exercises easier to run. So I do that for a variety of different reasons. You can do whatever is most comfortable for you, and you just need to make sure that if you're going to use your own machine to connect to this thing, then you need to establish a VPN connection using OpenVPN and connect to the TryHackMe server so that you can actually run all these exercises from your own computer. So the commands like get system and hash dump will provide important leverage and information for privilege escalation and lateral movement. Meterpreter is a good base that you can use to run post-exploitation on Metasploit. You can also use the load command to leverage additional tools like Kiwi or even a Python interpreter. So you can actually load Python and start working with Python. So Python execute print, TryHackMe rocks, etc. will actually, execute Python, this specific command. So print, TryHackMe rocks. Now, this is kind of confusing because this is not the format or the syntax that I learned how to write Python with. If you are familiar with it, there's parentheses that's usually involved. And for me, this is a little bit challenging, and I would rather write the script and transfer a script file to the Meterpreter session and then just run the script file than trying to write the script inside of the Meterpreter session. So that's just me personally. Post-exploitation phase will have several goals, and Metasploit can actually assist. So gathering further information about the target system, looking for interesting files, user credentials, additional network interfaces, and any other interesting information on the target, privilege escalation, lateral movement, etc. So once any additional tool is loaded using the load command, you'll see new options on the help menu, right? So the example shows when you add the Kiwi module using load Kiwi, we can run the, this is what it actually looks like, and then you could actually do a help command, and then you can now see Kiwi commands that are available here as well. So for example, retrieving all credentials, or retrieving Kerberos, or LM and TLM, or SSP, etc. So there's a lot of good stuff that's available through Kiwi. The questions below will help you have a better understanding of how it can be used. You can use the credentials below to simulate an initial compromise over SMB using the SMB PS exec, username, and password. So it's the computer name, target domain, name of the share, the NTLM hash of the chambers user, clear text password for chambers, where is the secrets file located, what is the Twitter password reviewed in secrets, what is the real secret txt, and what is the actual secret. So that is pretty much it. That's what we got. And now I am comfortable or free to go ahead and open up our TryHackMe attack box here and have some fun. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to use, I guess, this one. So they're saying initial compromise over SMB using these credentials, and so it's the exploit Windows SMB PS exec. So I am not going to search for it. We could just kind of use that exploit, but I guess I'll search for it just so we can kind of do the full series of commands so you can actually see what it's like, right? So this is essentially what it would be like if you were to do everything from the very, very beginning interacting with Metasploit. So the very first thing would be to launch the console. So Msfconsole is what we type in. We launch this bad boy. It usually takes about a minute to fully run. Sometimes it does an update while it's doing it. sometimes it just runs. So there we go, starting Metasploit Framework console. And once we see it, it'll even do a little image on the screen for us using code. The last time that I saw it, I think it was a duck that it created. So let's see what is generated this time. And if we scroll up here, oh cool, this is actually new. So this is like that missile, what's that, what is it? Asteroid, I think. It kind of, that's what it resembles, is the Asteroid game. It's still not fully loaded, right? So when it actually finally loads, your command line is going to change from this or whatever that your username and IP address is, whatever that is. It's going to turn into MSF and then the version, so MSF6 in this particular case. And there we go. So we have 2,502 exploits available, 1616 payloads, 9 evasion techniques, and now we actually have our official command line MSF6. Perfect. So there we go. So now we can do a search for the exploit that we wanted to use, in this case, that exploit. And then it'll bring it up for us. So I can now do use 0, or I could have just from the very beginning just done use and then pasted the full exploit name itself, and then it'll just convert me into that. So now you can see that my command line has actually changed to read MSF6, and it includes the payload. So once we're inside any kind of a exploit, excuse me, not payload, I keep saying payload. Once we're inside any kind of an exploit, or I should even say module, the very next thing that we want to do is show options. We want to see what this specific module requires. So in our case, it doesn't require our hosts, but when you're doing any kind of exploitation, even though it doesn't require our host, you need to set our host. Otherwise, it won't know what it's trying to connect to, right? So you could technically be interacting with another session. So that could be another way that you can include the host that you want to connect to. That could be a version of it. That's why the our host is not required here. But for our particular case, we are definitely going to be using our host. And then we're also going to do the SMB pass and the user, because we actually have that, so that we can go ahead and set it. So the very first thing is we need to get the IP address of our target host, and we need to set it to the our hosts option. And boom, boom, boom. So there's our host. The credentials are what? What are the? It's B Allen and password 1 with a capital P. So we will go here and do the set SMB user to B Allen. There we go. Set SMB pass to password 1. Oh crap, I mistyped it. So unset SMB pass. So now set SMB pass to password 1. Okay, there we go. All right, good stuff. Now let's do show options here. And so we got that. There we go. Password 1, B Allen. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Very good. All of that is good. So now we should be able to just run the exploit, and hopefully we will be able to get that Meterpreter session. So I will just type run, press enter, and cross my fingers that this actually works on the very first try. So let's see. Excellent. So it actually worked, and we have our very first session. So I guess clear does not work in this particular menu. So let's do help. Let's see what's available in this Meterpreter session here. So there's a bunch of stuff that's available for us, and it starts from the very, very top. Look, there's a lot of stuff that's available here. So let's start. Core commands, background, BG kill, all useful. Get UID gets the session GUID. And let's see what else we can get here. Machine ID, get the MSF ID of the machine itself. Quit, read, sessions, of course. We can use something. The commands for the file system are very similar to everything else that we have, so this is nice. Do we have a CLS or clear? These are the networking commands. Clear rev, clear the event log is what it does. So definitely don't want to do that. I do want to clear my screen, or at least be able to do that when I need to do it. But okay, cool, no worries. So what am I? We want the first question here is, what is the computer name? So let's see what we can do with getting the computer name. So it could be UUID. It could potentially be the machine ID. So let's try UUID. Let's see what we get here. There it is. And let's see. It's not info. I don't think it's info. Oh yeah, because we would need to actually give it the name of the command itself. So we have UUID that was available. That would be the system information, or these are kind of like the core commands that are available here. Let's see if we can actually find something else. So file system, checksum, change direct. This is all file system stuff. So none of these things would actually be interesting to us at this point, but we can definitely find more information. Netstat, displayed network connection, resolve route. All of these things could be handy. System commands. So drop token, execute, get environment, get PID, get the current process identifier, one or more environment variables, get privileges, get SID, which is the SID of the user that it will be running, get UID, getting the UID of the user. So NT authority system, that would be the command itself. And I wonder if that's the answer that it's looking for. Well, computer name is it wants the computer name. I got excited when I saw get UID. So I want the computer name. Let me see what else I can find here for the system. So let's go here. Get SID of the user that the server is running at, local time, pgrep, ps, reboot, reg, shell shutdown, suspend, sysinfo, get information about the remote system, such as OS. And the computer name itself, I wonder why the computer name, maybe I'm missing it, right? I honestly think it's probably sysinfo. So let's do sysinfo. And okay, cool. There we go. We have Acme test. There you go. That's the computer name. All right, cool. Good stuff. And there's a lot of good information about that over there as well. So Acme test. There we go. What is the target domain? Is that available here? Domain is Flash. I think that's the answer. And what is the name of the share likely created by the user? So we can actually try to find that as well. So the name of the share information is something that would be available in our list of commands. So let's see what the share enumeration can potentially be here. Okay, so there's nothing here that we can do. So one of the things that we can do is we can background our Meterpreter session by doing Control-Z and then Y for yes. And then we can do back here. And now I can actually clear the screen. And so what I want to do is I want to do enum shares. So I want to do enum shares for a search. Let's see if that works. There we go. SMB enum shares. Perfect. And then SNMP and enum share. Okay, so it's the first one for sure. So we're going to, or actually no, it's a post-exploitation. So I need to do a post-exploitation, not an auxiliary. So I think it's this one, gather enum shares, which gathers SMB share enumeration via registry. Okay, so we're going to use that one. So first let me see what's the ID for my session. It's ID 1. Okay, great. So we're going to use post windows gather enum shares. That's going to be the one. And then we're going to show options here. And we do need to basically list the session. That's it. So we're going to do set session to ID 1. And then we're going to run it. And there we go. Now it actually worked on that session against Acme test, right? Perfect. So what's the thing it says? What's the name of the share likely created by the user? So what do we have? Sysvol, we have netlogon, and we have speedster. Probably speedster. I think that's the one. So speedster. All right, what's the NTLM hash of the JChambers user? So I think now we can actually just get out of this post-exploitation thing, and we want to use hash dump, right? Something like hash dump. Let's see what the hint says here. In the Meterpreter prompt, you will need to migrate to the LSAS process and then run hash dump. Okay, interesting. Okay, so we have to actually go back into our session for the Meterpreter. So sessions-I and then number 1. So now we're inside of the Meterpreter session. And so let's get the PID, or what is it? PS actually. So PS, and then we need to get into the LSAS. the LSAS PID is 760. So we want to migrate to 760. And we're going from 3952 to 760. And that worked. So now let's do hash dump. And, oh, it died. No. Why? Why did it die? That's what it says, right? Go to the LSAS and then run hash dump. That's exactly what I did. No fair. Why did it die? That shouldn't have died. Okay, so what now? So if I press enter again, what happens? Do we just exit out of that? Reason, so Meterpreter session closed. Reason is that it died. And now we got to go back to the top of our list of things here. So we're going to do the SMB PS exec, and we're going to try to get that Meterpreter session one more time because it died on us. I hope it doesn't die again because that would suck. But all right, so I'm gonna do the whole thing again from the very beginning, and then we are going to try one more time. So let me just set this whole thing up and then we will try it again. Okay, cool. So this time it took 3 attempts at running exploit or run, and it finally got the Meterpreter session going for us. Okay, so now we want to migrate to LSAS, and let's see if maybe I missed something the last time that I did it. So what do I have? I have the PID and the PPID. So it's definitely the first column that we're looking for. And we're looking for the LSAS, right? And there's only one instance of LSAS, so that should be fine. So we're going to do this one more time, and we're going to hopefully be successful. Otherwise, I have to just keep doing it. So now it's 732 is the PID for LSAS. So we will do migrate to 732. Press enter. And so we migrated from 3488 to 732, and again just confirming 732 is LSAS, right? And then over here it says to move to LSAS. Okay, great. And then run hash dump. So here we go. Please do not die on me. That's all I'm gonna say. Here we go. Okay, so it did it again, and the issue seems to be I don't know if this is because I'm running hash dump inside of Meterpreter. I should have actually looked at the help menu before I did this. Maybe there was something that I missed, but it could also be that we could be using, or we should be using, a post-exploitation module to get all of the hash values. That could be a reason. So let's see. We're just gonna close that. It says hash dump interrupted, but the reason had already died, or the connection itself was dead. So that kind of feels a little bit moot here. So let's do show options. I feel like I don't need to do much other than just make sure that everything is set, and then just run exploit one more time. So I'm going to do this one more time, and this time around I am going to run the help menu first before I actually do hash dump, and we'll see after we've switched to the LSAS process. We'll see what the help menu is like and how it changes, and if there's anything about it that we need to do. And the exploitation, come on buddy, work. Okay, cool. So I gave it a few seconds because I kept doing run one after another. I gave it a few seconds before the last time that I ran it, and it actually established a connection. So all right, cool. So now we are going to again run the list of all the processes. We are going to find LSAS, and then we're going to migrate to LSAS. But this time we're going to 732. There it is. So this time, after we've done the migration, I'm going to run help menu one more time, and I want to see what is available on this help menu. Okay, so hash dump dumps the contents of the SAM database. So it should work, right? There should be nothing that stops this from actually running. There was a way that we could have done get system to attempt to elevate the privileges to that of the local system, and then there's hash dump to dump the contents of the database. Okay, here we go. Hash dump. Let's try it. Don't die on me. And Meterpreter session 3 closed. The reason is that it died. And that is unfortunate. Maybe I should just let it run for a second. And maybe it'll work. Maybe. Because I keep stopping it. And then it says that hash dump was interrupted or something like that. So I'm just going to let it run for like a minute or two. And maybe it'll work. Maybe I've just been ending it prematurely or something. Okay, so we didn't even need to switch to the LSASS process. So I did it again, right? I went to the very beginning because it timed out and it didn't work, right? So this is the last piece that I did and it didn't work. So I did Control-C and I tried to run the exploit several more times, and I finally got a Meterpreter session, got the help menu, and I remember from earlier when I ran the user command to actually get the name of the user that we were on, and it said that we were the NT system, right? So the NT system user. So I was like, okay, fine. If we just do a basic help command, then it shows us under the password database commands that we actually have access to hash dump and we're already the system user. So it's not like we need to elevate our privileges any more than that. So I just ran hash dump without going into the LSASS process, and look at that, it actually worked and there was no issues whatsoever. So this is whatever. I feel like the instructions maybe were a little bit faulty, but it's fine. So there's that, and now we have the NTLM hash of the Jane Chambers user, just like that. That's insane. Okay, but all right, so now we need to get the clear text password version of this. So I'm just gonna go to CrackStation and let's see if we can actually find the clear text value of this. Oh, there you go. Trust no one. Easy enough. And very good. So let's go here and paste that right there. What is the secrets? Where's the secrets file located? So what we are trying to do is find the secrets file. So we can just do this. We can do search for a file. So search -f, and then we'll do secrets.txt basically. Let's see if it exists. I wonder if we need to go into the JChambers user account. If we do, we'll just do that, but I'm just going to try to see if it exists on the current system that I'm in, and hopefully it does. So let's see. Okay, so the first command for searching for secret.txt didn't yield anything, and the next one that I did was search for basically *.txt, and it yielded a bunch of these different files. Unfortunately, it didn't yield the secret.txt, so it actually has the real secret that we can see right here, and that's probably one of the ones that we do need to get anyways. So we are currently in Windows System 32. So if I do now, okay, I'm on the root. So let's go to cd inetpub and cd www root. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, is because for whatever reason, when I do cd directly to the actual location by typing out the full path, it doesn't work. So I have to do it like manually like that. Okay, so there we go, real secret. So let's do cat real secret.txt. And the Flash is the fastest man alive is what it says. And you know what? That's pretty true. Like there was this whole thing that they made the Flash race against Superman, and that was not it. Okay, so the full path to this file is also another one of the questions that we have here. So there's the full path of that. And now here's the thing. Secrets.txt. Maybe it's because I searched for secret.txt. Maybe that's why it didn't work. So search for a file named secrets.txt with an S at the end of secrets. And hopefully this one actually will work, because I feel like maybe I did just secret by itself. Okay, there you go. So it actually worked. So there we go. It's inside programs, files, etc. So Let me see if I could actually do this. So if I do this, right? So if I CD my way into this location, let's see if it works, because previously it didn't work. And I'm very curious if it'll work this time. And did it work? Oh, it did work. Okay, so maybe it was my last session of Meterpreter for whatever reason, or the version of Meterpreter that I was using. Maybe that's why it didn't work. Okay, so I'm so glad I did that, because this actually speeds up our process. The Twitter password is this, and we got to include that exclamation at the end. And there we go. And this is the Twitter password. Awesome. And we're going to now go and get the full path of this file, which is this whole spiel right there. And that is it. So there it is. That's all it took. And really the biggest thing, the biggest thing was that we didn't have to switch to the LSAS process before we did hash dump. That was kind of like the biggest challenge, or the biggest hurdle that I ran across when I went through this, because I just ran it as a normal, you know, as soon as I got the Meterpreter session, basically, I just did hash dump because it was listed as one of the commands that was available for me, and it worked like a charm. And then after that, I didn't have to switch to the JChambers user. I just ran everything else while I was inside of my current Meterpreter session, and you saw the rest of it work out. So fairly straightforward once we got just a couple of those hurdles taken care of. So hopefully you were actually able to follow along, and you were able to get the same answers that I got and get the same results that I got from the commands that I ran. If you got value out of this room and in this video, and if you'd like to get more videos like this one, then I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, especially as we wrap up Jr.PenTester and as we go ahead and wrap up the CompTIA Pentest Plus pathway as well. If you have any questions or any comments about what we covered today, or any questions or comments about anything else that you would like to get answered, please drop it in the comments section below. I am very responsive to the comments that come in. And of course, if you want the content, if you have any specific requests for any kind of content, please go ahead and drop that in the comments section below as well. You can always go ahead and use this little search button right here and search for information, search for any kind of content that already exists out of the 413 videos that are already on this channel. But by the time that you see this, I promise you there's going to be even more videos on the channel. And then there's all of the stuff that's available on the homepage. So there's the sections of the actual comments themselves inside of our community that come in. And I usually just give shout outs to people who pass their examinations, or they get a job through the content, any of those cool things. This is the CompTIA series of playlists that we have, the members only videos. This is for you section, so this will change depending on who you are and what kind of content that you watch. The popular videos, the creator playlist, SOC level 1, SOC level 2, security engineering, all of that good stuff. So a lot of really good stuff for you, and feel free to rummage around, roam around, and see if there's anything interesting that you would find useful for yourself. And of course, as always, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. And then there's Hackaholics Anonymous. If you're serious about your SysAdmin education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. It's your boy Hank Hackers, and at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next video later.